Chapter 126. Master, the teleportation array has been constructed. 2 hours later, Moss's voice sounded in Aris' ear with a hint of joy. The boy put away his wand, stood up from the ground, and rubbed his nose tiredly. How about it, Moss? Can you calculate the success rate of this magic circle? Looking at the complex and huge magic array under his feet, Aris actually had no idea what to do. If it weren't for Moss's help, he would never be able to set up such a complex magic teleportation array. This was far beyond his current level. Based on the inference from the existing data, the probability of successfully deploying the magic circle is about 70%, but we can make further corrections based on the data fed back from the first run. Master, don't worry too much. I hope it goes well. Aris nodded slightly. Next, all he had to do was go to Nicolal's safe house in Paris and set up a second magic circle. If everything goes well, next time he comes back, he should be able to use the magic circle to teleport back directly. Let's go to the training ground first. Moss, remember to record all the training data. I need you to make a detailed training plan for each of Harry and the others. After this actual combat simulation 30, they will probably have to fight hard in the next few days. Aris could now almost imagine the wonderful expressions on the little wizards' faces after being tortured by him. Although he felt a little reluctant, Aris felt that they still needed a little encouragement. What better motivation could there be than a tragic failure? Yes, Yin. Along with Moss's voice, the boy's figure disappeared on the top floor of the castle. Training ground. The little wizards were sitting together discussing at this time. I just heard from Swalaya that Aris is back. And they said that we would have a practical training later. Are we going to enter that simulated combat training ground? Great. I've been wanting to go in and take a look for a long time. Actual combat. We have been practicing for so long, and finally we can try out the true power of Fireball. Several people were a little excited, and their eyes kept scanning the two actual combat training grounds in the corner not far away. Because of Aris's reminder, they had not dared to enter these two venues before, but they were now extremely curious. At this time, Aris' figure had already appeared at the entrance of the training ground. He coughed lightly, immediately attracting the attention of all the little wizards. Aris! Elder brother! Several people ran towards the boy quickly. Then I won't talk nonsense. Aris brought a few people to the simulation field with various terrains such as grasslands, stone forests, and lakes, then waved his hand gently and distributed several sets of specially customized combat uniforms to everyone. These clothes have good defensive capabilities. After putting them on, you don't have to worry about being hurt by spells. Aris looked at them meaningfully. That's great. I was just thinking that if I were hit by a fireball, I would be burned to death. With this piece of clothing, I should be fine. Ronald pinched the thick leather armor in his hand, a relaxed expression on his face. So, are we going to fight in groups now? Hermione quickly put the horns on herself, then looked at Aris and asked. That's right, we'll fight in groups. Aris nodded gently, all of you form a group. Everyone. Harry looked over in confusion. Then who is our enemy? Ronald also reacted belatedly. Of course it's me. Aris looked at the little wizards with a smile. Brother, do I want to fight you? Even Luna was a little stunned. That's right. Aris touched the little girl's hair, and then said seriously, in this actual battle, your task is to use all means to defeat me, any means are fine, even throwing stones is no problem. Just remember, if you defeat me, you will win. And the condition for your victory is that as long as any spell or attack falls on me, you win. So, is there anything else unclear? After these words were spoken, the young wizards looked at each other, and then their faces turned grim instantly. Our opponent is Aris. How can we possibly win? Ronald had only 2 words in his mind at this moment: outrageous. We definitely can't win in a head-on battle, but there are 5 of us, maybe. Harry muttered, and then fell silent. Hermione and Chu frowned and looked at Aris, as if they had not expected that the training would be arranged like this. They all knew how abnormal Reese's power was. Not to mention the things that happened in school, there were also the results of the big exam at the beginning of the school that shocked the entire school's teachers and students. Even at Malfoy Manor, although the report in the Daily Prophet was vague and did not clearly describe the situation at the time, everyone present could imagine that in the face of so many pure-blood wizards' siege, Aris was able to solve all the problems without getting hurt at all. This is beyond their imagination. Any form of attack, is it okay? At this time, Luna tilted her head and looked at Aris with interest. Well, any attack will do. Aris nodded affirmatively, only if it lands right on my body. I understand. Luna also nodded, then turned and walked towards the actual combat training ground. In that case, let's get started. Let me see how powerful my brother is. Seeing the little girl 320 suddenly getting excited, Harry and Ronald looked at each other, then gritted their teeth and followed. Come on, let's kill Aris as a game boss. You should have played games before. Harry waved at Hermione and Cho, and said, let's go in first and discuss tactics. I won't lose too badly. Hermione looked at Aris and waved her little fist. Well, if it's just such a simple request, maybe we can win. Chuya winked at Aris. I will wait 10 minutes after you enter the venue before going in. Before that, you can make some preparations. Looking at the people walking into the training ground, Aris smiled again. Very good, Ji is not bad. I'm really worried that you'll give up before the fight even starts. With the protection of the leather armor, I will control the power of magic to the minimum, so it should be fine. Then, the fun begins. Aris didn't even pull out his wand. 10 minutes later, he slowly walked into the combat training ground. The figure quickly disappeared into the woods. Meanwhile, Harry and the others were gathered somewhere in the woods, looking at the entrance from afar. Discussing the next tactics quietly. Chapter 127. It's definitely not possible to attack head-on. We can't even get to Aris. We must attack from multiple directions at the same time, maybe there will be a chance. Or, we can attack by surprise. He can't observe everywhere, right? Perhaps, now is the time to test the results of our recent training. Feng Xian's speed is very fast. Chu, you can be the main attacker. Luna looks the least lethal, and can be hidden from the driver's actions. Harry and the others discussed in low voices for a long time, and finally the young wizards dispersed and gathered in the direction of Aris. At this time, Aris had just walked into the training ground. Not bad, you even know how to hide and launch a surprise attack. He looked around and didn't see the little wizards, so he nodded with satisfaction. Aris thought that these little guys would confront him head-on, but if that were the case, they really wouldn't have any chance. This venue was built too hastily, and some details are not in place. There was complete silence all around, no sound at all, which was obviously abnormal. In addition to the rustling of leaves in the wind, there should at least be the sounds of small animals. Unfortunately, to perform such an environmental change spell, even for Aris, it would take a huge amount of energy. It's just a training ground, there's really no need to make it so perfect. As he thought about it, he walked deeper into the woods. Suddenly, a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Here I am. Although I am very careful, it is a pity. Still can't escape the apparition spell. Aris gently raised his hand and waved it in a certain direction, and a strong wind swept over immediately. Then, a figure fell to the ground from behind the tree in a mess. Aris, how could you find me? Ronald sat on the ground speechless, looking at Aris who was approaching step by step with confusion. It's a simple revealing spell, don't you know it? Aris said as a matter of course. I'm afraid you're the only one who knows this spell. Ronald suddenly grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground and threw it directly at Aris. Then, without caring whether he hit the target or not, he stood up and jumped madly towards the back. It's quite clever, but it's useless. Aris moved his feet slightly, and his body appeared 10 meters away like a phantom. Then, he waved his right hand again, and Ronald, who was running away, felt his body lighten, and then he floated up. This spell should be familiar to you, yes, it's the levitation spell. Aris' voice sounded from behind. Aris, if you dare, put me down and let's have a fair fight. Ronald shouted indignantly in midair, and kept trying to turn around to see where Aris was. Unfortunately, his body was tightly controlled by Aris at this moment and he couldn't move at all. Harry is here too. Just when Ronald was about to give up struggling, Aris' voice rang out again. At this moment, Ronald instantly remembered his mission and began to struggle frantically again. Aris, what are you talking about? How could Harry be here? Don't even think about finding them. They are hiding much better than I am. They will definitely give you a fatal blow at the right moment. We will definitely win this battle in the end. Enough, you're making too much noise. Aris waved his hand again, and the next moment, Ronald was silenced. Although his mouth was still opening and closing, he could no longer make any sound. Even the cover is so amateurish. Aris shook his head helplessly and looked to the other side. Harry was indeed very careful, he had ambushed here in advance and did not move at all. Unfortunately, he still couldn't escape his development curse. At this moment, according to Aris's perception, he could clearly feel any fluctuations of magic power around him. This is also why he was able to spot Ronald and Harry first. "Come out, stop hiding." Aris looked at the place where Harry was hiding with some boredom. If this is the only means available to young wizards, they will probably be disappointed. This childish method is really too childish. They haven't used their abilities as wizards at all. "I won't go out. Come and catch me if you can." Harry's voice came from the front, with a feeling of gnashing teeth, as if he was annoyed why Aris found him so quickly. "Okay, then I'll come and catch you." Aris smiled and then walked slowly forward. He wasn't afraid that Harry would set a trap. Because he always felt that in the face of absolute strength, all cleverness was in vain. At this moment, a strong wind suddenly blew from the left. Aris raised his hand slightly, and a stronger whirlwind blocked the magic. Then he looked in the direction of the whirlwind with some surprise. "Chew." Aris smiled, "I didn't expect you guys to be so smart." Aris understood instantly. These little guys must have discussed it beforehand. As soon as Ronald's position was exposed, they knew the effect of the development spell. Then, Harry found out the range of the appearance spell through the process of his own discovery. And Chew's attack was obviously launched from the direction where the developing spell took effect. It's a good match, but it's still useless. Aris stretched out his hand to block the whirlwind, causing Chew in the distance to grit his teeth. She didn't expect that Aris's casting speed would be so fast. Just now, the whirlwind was only 2 or 3 meters away from Aris. The boy almost instantly sent out a whirlwind to offset her magic. This casting speed is simply abnormal. At this time, the young wizards finally realized the gap between them and Reese. "I just can't. I can't break through your defense." At this moment, Harry, who was not far away, came out with a handful of stones in his hand and started throwing them at Aris frantically. At this time, throwing stones may be more effective than any magic. This method of attack that does not require casting is the best method of attack that Harry can think of. Delicious. Faced with the stones that kept coming down on him, Aris' figure turned into a white afterimage and disappeared instantly. This magic was similar to the one that made the Death Eaters turn into black smoke and fly, but when Aris performed it, it was a blurry white afterimage, somewhat similar to the white smoke appearance performed by the Order of the Phoenix members in the original book, but not exactly the same. This is an advanced magic of apparition that allows wizards to fly without a broom. As the wizard practices different magic systems, corresponding different effects will appear. After the white afterimage appeared, Aris' figure passed through all the stones thrown by Harry and appeared directly in front of him. Then, another levitation spell. Harry, like Ronald, was floating in the air like a decoration. "Aris, you cheated." Inside, Harry's voice sounded dissatisfied, with a little anger. "We can't deal with this kind of magic at all." Chapter 128. You can't expect your enemies to only know the few spells you know, can you? Aris shook his head in amusement. Harry's words were so childish. Although he was just an 11-year-old boy. If an enemy used the killing curse on you, would you still say he was cheating? "I just feel that." Harry opened his mouth, but eventually fell silent. He also knew that what he just said didn't make any sense. "But I just feel a little unconvinced." Aris used a levitation spell to control Harry and Ronald to float behind, and continued to walk in the direction where Chew had just launched the whirlwind. But Chew is very smart. After missing the first attack, they quickly retreated and had disappeared from sight at this time. However, the effect of the developing spell still managed to track her down. In Aris's perception, the magical fluctuations unique to autumn extended all the way to the depths of the woods, and the trajectory was very clear. When you're really fighting, you must not only understand the enemy's position and ideas, but also hide yourself well, so that you can catch them by surprise. Even if you defeat a wizard who is stronger than you, it's not without soja. Aris is still teaching the little wizards diligently. His voice echoed throughout the woods, even Chew and Hermione, who were far away, could hear it clearly. By this time, Chew had already reunited with Hermione. "What should we do? We can't get close to him at all." Chu's expression was a little serious. The whirlwind just now was just a test, and it did let them see a glimpse of Aris's strength. However, even though it was just the tip of the iceberg, the two little witches still felt a little desperate. The two sides are not opponents of the same level at all. We must find a way. The conditions for victory are the key. As long as we can attack him, any attack will do. Hermione also frowned. She kept recalling the spells she knew in her mind, and then a plan gradually formed in her mind. Let's not worry about Luna for now. We need to try our best to hold Aris back so that we can create opportunities for her. As she spoke, Hermione whispered something in Chu's ear. After a moment, Chu's brows also frowned. Is this really okay? Hermione shook her head. I'm not sure. If it was a real fight, we wouldn't stand a chance against Aris. But the rules are different now. Maybe we can give it a try and proceed according to plan. Okay. Chu nodded. Afterwards, the two separated again and moved carefully in the direction of Aris. Are you still not going to attack? Aris glanced at Harry and Ronald floating in the air, smiled and shook his head. Your companions won't be able to hold on for much longer. If it was in a real battle at 490, they might have died. Before he finished speaking, a scorching flame appeared in the distance. Then, a fireball came whistling. Aris raised a smile. I found you. He waved his hand lightly, and a protective shield instantly appeared in front of him. The fireball hit the protective shield, barely causing a ripple. But it's not over yet. On the left side, a whirlwind appeared again, and a flash of fire appeared in the direction where the fireball came from. The whirlwind and the fireball arrived at Aris's location almost at the same time, and a wonderful change occurred between the two. The fire took advantage of the wind, and the originally small fireball, under the influence of the whirlwind, actually formed a sea of fire that swept towards Aris. Oh! Nice combination magic! A hint of surprise appeared in Aris's eyes. He actually underestimated Hermione and Chu. These two girls have made great progress. Even if this magic is used outdoors, any adult wizard will probably suffer if he is not particularly vigilant. It was hard to imagine that this attack was launched by two 11-year-old little witches. Unfortunately, it still doesn't work for me. Aris did not move. The previous protective shield once again blocked the howling flames, and then the intense flames quickly dissipated. In just a moment, the fire that was enough to ignite the entire forest was completely extinguished. Aris, try this. At this moment, Hermione's voice suddenly came from the front. Immediately afterwards, several fireballs came crashing down. Over there, Chu also attacked again. The whirlwind combined perfectly with the fireball technique, igniting the howling flames once again. But this time, the target of the flames was not Aris, but the trees around him. Due to the extremely high temperature and propagation speed of the flame wind, the trees around Aris were quickly ignited, and the entire area instantly turned into a sea of fire. I'm really a little surprised. Aris took Harry and the other two to stand in a protective shield. Even though the fire was raging around them, not a single flame could break through the protection of the shield. This scene left Harry and the other two stunned. You even know how to use the surrounding environment to make the magic more powerful. Aris nodded approvingly, then reached out again and pressed down gently. Then, a deep blue magic power surged out from his palm and instantly swept across the entire area. The sea of fire that was raging in the woods was quickly extinguished under the influence of this magical power. It's best to use water energy to restrain fire magic. Once again, Aris easily suppressed the combined attack of Hermione and Cho. Okay, I don't want to play with you anymore. The boy's voice sounded again, and then he turned into a white shadow and disappeared on the spot. When he appeared again, he was already 100 meters away. Hermione was hiding behind a big tree at this time. Before she could react, she was controlled by Aris and floated into the air. All you can do is levitate and curse. Hermione yelled in annoyance. Fortunately, she didn't wear a skirt today to facilitate the battle, otherwise how could she face people with Aris playing like this? Straight guy, big idiot. The little witch was filled with resentment, which turned into resentful looks that pierced Aris like needles. If looks could kill, this training would have ended in Aris's defeat. Okay, be quiet. Aris looked at Hermione helplessly, then considerately lowered her to a height so that she floated half a meter above the ground and followed behind him. So, there are two people left. Aris continued to walk forward with ease, followed by three little wizards with resentful faces, floating behind him like zombies. It's over, Hermione has been caught too. Chu had no other options at this point. Before she even had time to react, she felt a flash of white light in front of her, and then heard Hermione's scream. Everything happened so quickly that she was not mentally prepared at all. Are you still not running? At this time, Aris's voice sounded beside her ear, this is not a wise thing to do. Before Chu could react, he felt his body lighten, and then he saw 3 pairs of helpless and aggrieved eyes. Another person was added to the long line of floating people. Then, Aris looked forward. There is the breath of Luna. At this moment, a whistling sound suddenly came from mid-air. Aris looked up and saw a whirlwind rapidly forming. The range of that whirlwind was extremely large, even 3 or 4 times larger than the one released by Chu. However, this whirlwind had no cohesion, and the damage was definitely far less than that of the condensed version of the whirlwind. Revised version of wind cyclone. Aris was stunned for a moment, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. He didn't expect that Luna could do this. Then, he frowned again, but what's the point of this? It has no attack power at all. It's like a big special effects magic. In the air, as a large whirlwind formed, the surrounding leaves were constantly gathering together. The falling leaves are flying in the air, accompanied by the whistling wind, which creates a sense of beauty. Luna, are you going to perform magic tricks for me? Aris raised his head and looked forward. At this time, the little girl had already walked out from behind the big tree by herself. She raised her hand and struggled to control the output of magic power, but there was a faint smile on her face. Yes, brother, does it look good? As soon as he finished speaking, the whirlwind in the sky suddenly dissipated, and the falling leaves lost control and suddenly floated all over the forest. Aris looked at this scene, shook his head helplessly, and smiled, yeah, it looks good. But have you forgotten? We are still training now. Aris wondered in his heart, this little girl might not be here for training, but to play? I know this is training. Luna came to Aris with her hands behind her back, pointed at a leaf that fell on the boy's shoulder, and said with a bright smile, look, my attack fell on you. Aris was stunned for a moment, then looked at the fallen leaf on his body. Dab J, the expression on his face became more interesting. So, this is what you were thinking. Aris finally reacted and shook his head in amusement. He gently brushed away the fallen leaves, then touched Luna's little head and said approvingly, not bad, very thoughtful. If this leaf is cast with some sufficiently concealed curse magic, I'll really have to see how you do it. Anyway, you've barely made it through. Behind him, cheers from the Japanese audience rang out. Hermione and the others were totally impressed with Luna at this moment. When all of them were wiped out, it was Luna, the weakest one who had just learned the wind whirl, who saved the entire team and won the game. It must be said that her performance conquered all the young wizards. Luna, you're amazing. Aris probably never dreamed that he would be defeated by a small leaf. This is a perfect battle plan. Why didn't I think of it before? This is definitely the most exciting match in this training session, haha. That being said, we have to admit that this way of winning is nothing but a shortcut. In terms of real strength, even if we put our combined strength together, we can never get close to brother. Luna smiled as she looked at Aris, with undisguised admiration on her face. We all know, Aris is too strong. Harry also looked at the boy with burning eyes. I thought I had tried hard enough, but now it seems, it's still far from enough. Hermione looked a little frustrated. Chu and Ronald didn't say anything, but the way they looked at Aris and the expressions on their faces showed their admiration for the boy. Okay, this actual combat training ends here. Aris waved his hand gently and let everyone down. Your performance has exceeded my expectations. I'm very happy that your training during this period has not been in vain, and your strength has improved greatly. Especially Hermione and Chu, your fighting ability and grasp of the timing of the battle are not even comparable to the 3rd and 4th year students of Hogwarts. It can be said to be outstanding. I am proud of you. Aris glanced at the two of them approvingly, then looked at Luna. And Luna, your talent amazes me even more. Without a wand, wandless spell casting can perform an improved version of the whirlwind. Aris looked at the little girl gently and praised, this ability is not something that even many adult wizards can do. You are the one who surprised me the most among them. You are awesome. Finally, Aris looked at Harry and Ronald. You two may have slightly weaker magical abilities, but you are quite self-sacrificing and deserve praise. Hearing this, Harry and Ronald looked at each other, and then their faces fell instantly. Is that it? As expected, we too are the weakest. Ronald was about to cry. I will try my best and I won't be defeated so easily next time. Harry clenched his fists tightly as if he had been injected with chicken blood. Okay, I've prepared a feast, let's go out and celebrate your victory. Aris looked at them with a smile, feeling very good. These little guys are the pillars of the future wizarding world. If they can truly learn the essence of elemental magic before graduation, then the reform of the wizarding world in the future. What else is impossible? The next day, Schwang. Nick Flamel's safe house in Paris, France. Seeing Aris coming back, Nick Flamel's eyes suddenly lit up. Little guy, why did you take so long yesterday? Senior Nick, I have been researching the teleportation magic circle recently and have made some progress. Is it okay if I try it out here with you? Aris put forward his idea directly. Teleportation magic circle. Nick Flamel looked at the boy in surprise. This is something that appeared a long time ago. The old man seemed to be lost in his memories, with a look of surprise and confusion. But how do you know such an ancient and mysterious magic skill? Well, I learned it from an ancient book. Aris did not explain too much and asked again, I want to carve a sub-magic circle here. If it succeeds, it will be more convenient to travel back and forth. Do you think it's okay? At this time, Nick Flamel also reacted and nodded repeatedly. Of course, I can't wait to experience this ancient secret technique. As an antique who has lived for more than 600 years, Nick Flamel can be said to be the living history of the wizarding world. But he was obviously very interested in magic circles. Soon, the two came to an empty room, where some debris was quickly cleaned up by Aris. Can I help you? Looking at Aris who was busy in the room, Nick Flamel couldn't help but ask. No need, senior, I'll be fine soon. Unlike the main magic circle, the sub-magic circle requires a much simpler diagram. However, this magic circle can only lead to one place, Shawfik Castle, while the magic circle in Shawfik Castle can connect multiple sub-magic circles, which is equivalent to the core point of the entire teleportation magic circle network. I can feel that these lines are full of magic. Nick Flamel observed carefully from the side, but although Nico was an absolute master in alchemy, he knew nothing about magic arrays. He had no idea what the patterns Aris had drawn meant, nor did he understand why those lines combined together could produce such powerful power. The principle of the magic circle is actually the same as the circulation of elemental energy. It is actually similar to alchemy. However, the difference between the magic circle and alchemy is the array pattern and the magic power circulation composition. This is similar to the ancient runes in alchemy, but it's completely different. Aris tried to explain it to Nick Flamel in a way that was easy to understand. Soon, as time went by, the prototype of the sub-teleportation magic circle appeared. Looking at the gorgeous and mysterious magic circle in front of him, Nicolael was amazed. It's so beautiful, it's definitely one of the most beautiful magical creations I've ever seen. Chapter 129. So next, as long as we step on this magic circle, can we instantly travel to a place thousands of miles away? Nick Flamel looked at the teleportation magic circle in front of him with some eagerness to try. Of course, but before that, I have to test it first. As he spoke, Aris had already walked into the magic circle and placed a small mouse for experiment on it. The little mouse was locked in a cage, looking at Aris with a confused face, not knowing that it would become the first user of the world's first teleportation array. It might be recorded in history, or it might get lost in the dangerous space turbulence. Everything depends on whether the magic circle drawn by Reese can successfully pass the test. Senior, please step back a little. I am going to activate the magic circle. As he spoke, Aris took out a magic crystal from somewhere and inserted it into the activation array. Teleportation array, activate. With the energy supplied, Aris directly activated the magic circle. Then, the blue light of the Eye of Tao suddenly emerged from the magic circle. Then, the surrounding space seemed to vibrate slightly. When Aris and Nicolael looked at the magic circle again, the experimental mouse on it had disappeared, as if it had never appeared. How is it? Nick Flamel asked nervously. At this time, he was even more nervous than when he was doing the experiment himself. Nick Flamel was very clear about the significance of the emergence of the magic circle. If this convenient and fast way of travel could be popularized, Aris would definitely become a person who would go down in history, and even the travel habits of the entire magic world would change. Compared to riding a broom, magic is obviously much faster. The experience of traveling through the fireplace is too bad, and it cannot compare with the teleportation array in terms of distance. The current flow network is somewhat like a community-based teleportation network. Short-distance teleportation is quite convenient, and the stuffiness and smell of ash during travel are tolerable. But if it is transmitted across borders, it will be very troublesome. Besides, no one wants to take a long cross-country trip through a fireplace. That feeling is really not pleasant. If magic teleportation arrays could become popular, I'm afraid there would be a very broad market. The Shafik family will probably make a lot of money from this. Most importantly, Aris' name will be completely known in the wizarding world. This boy's talent and ability will also become widely known. I'm going to go back and check. Aris did not answer McGonagall because he did not know the result of the transmission. According to the feedback from the magic circle, the transmission should have been successful. However, to confirm whether the mouse is still intact, we must go back to Shafik Castle. As he spoke, Aris walked quickly outside. Senior Nico, please wait for me for a moment, I'll be back soon. As soon as he finished speaking, Aris had already walked out of Nick Flamel's safe house. Then, a crackling sound was heard, and he operated away. As time passed, Nick Flamel returned to the magic teleportation array, his eyes fixed on the center of the array. If the array test result is successful, then Aris should have returned through the teleportation array. At this time, Nick Flamel was very uneasy. This situation had not happened for a long time. Ever since he turned 300, there has been basically nothing in this world that can make him emotional. But Aris brought him surprises again and again in just a few days. This made him feel inexplicably younger, and he had new expectations every day. Suddenly, streams of light appeared on the magic circle that had been silent all this time. The light started from the center and gradually flowed to the entire magic circle. Finally, every line of the magic circle was wrapped in blue light. Swish! As the light flickered violently, Aris appeared in the room. Nick Flamel rushed up immediately and looked at the boy with excitement. Success! Well, it worked. Aris nodded gently. Although there are still some areas that can be improved, there are no problems with the basic framework and core diagram of the teleportation array. It can be teleported normally. However, there are relatively few magic arrays laid out at present, so this array can only go back to the castle. This is incredible. Is this really possible? Nick Flamel walked around the magic circle again and again, carefully examining every pattern on it. If you are interested, you can try it. Aris smiled, then stepped forward and slightly adjusted a few places in the formation. Just now, after 2 experiments, Moss has recollected data and improved the plan for the teleportation array. The improved magic circle will become safer and its energy consumption will be greatly reduced. Can I try it? McGonagall was delighted, and then stood in front of the magic circle without hesitation. What are we waiting for? Let's go now. He had long wanted to try the feeling of teleportation. From the process of Aris's teleportation just now, it seemed that there was no apparition, or any problems with other modes of travel such as port keys and flow network. Especially apparition and port keys, the feeling of traveling through space was very uncomfortable. Some people can't even adapt to the feeling of nausea and dizziness, and completely give up this mode of travel. Just stand here. Aris pointed to an area in the center of the magic circle, and then stood next to Nick Flamel. Then he repeated the previous process again. The magic circle's light lit up again. Then, the two of them seemed to be walking through a gorgeous space tunnel with interwoven lights. Everything around them seemed to be moving backwards. Various kinds of light were distorted and refracted, making everything before their eyes bizarre and extremely spectacular. I never thought that space travel could be so comfortable. McGonagall could not help but blurt out, you can even enjoy such a beautiful scenery. Hey? You can actually talk while teleporting. He reacted suddenly and looked at Aris beside him. At this moment, the two were wrapped in a magical space bubble generated by pure magic power, just like sitting in a bus in a space tunnel. In this bus, whether the two people were communicating or doing anything, there was no effect at all. Yes, Senior Nico, this is the most amazing part of the teleportation array. This is the most amazing application of magic, and the greatest creation of elemental magic civilization. It's incredible. Nick Flamel murmured to himself, his face full of shock. He looked at the magnificent space tunnel outside the bubble. His eyes were never idle for a moment and he was in shock. A great creation of the elemental magic civilization. Elemental magic. Suddenly, Nick Flamel seemed to have thought of something and turned his head to look at Aris. You know elemental magic? And it seems you have studied it very deeply. Hey? Senior Nico also knows about this. Aris was also a little surprised. Of course. Nick Flamel's voice just fell. The environment around them suddenly changed, and they appeared on an empty and quiet rooftop. Welcome to my home, Senior Nico. Aris introduced with a smile. This is where I live, the castle of the Shafik family, located in England. It is the wealth passed down by the Shafik family for dozens of generations. Before Aris finished speaking, footsteps suddenly sounded from outside. Then, Harry and a group of people ran in from outside. Aris, it's really you. We just thought something had happened. The strange blue light emanating from here can be seen even over at the training ground. What is this? It looks like some kind of ancient magic array? Aris, have you researched some more powerful array? Who is this old man? I feel like I have seen him somewhere before. Nick Flamel. He's Nick Flamel. Hermione's voice made everyone quiet down. Niccolo Flamel? Is he the super powerful alchemist and the creator of the Philosopher's Stone? Harry was surprised. He is, the person we have been looking for a semester. Ronald's eyes also widened. What are you talking about? Why are you looking for Nikolai? Chu and Luna looked at the three people in confusion. On the other side, Aris looked at the group of young wizards who were making a fuss with some helplessness, and waved his hand gently. Come on, stop shouting. Senior Nico is my honored guest. Looking at the group of little wizards, Nick Flamel smiled, revealing a smile that he thought was very kind. However, to the little wizards, that smile seemed a little strange. His body was so old that the skin on his face tightly wrapped around his bones, making him look abnormally pale and bloodless. So when I smile, it feels a bit eerie. Aris, you must tell me about elemental magic later. Nick Flamel obviously had not forgotten what happened just now, and whispered to Aris. No problem, as long as you want to listen. Aris nodded. Afterwards, the old man was surrounded by curious little wizards. Especially Harry and others, they are very interested in the Philosopher's Stone now, and they will naturally not miss the opportunity to see Nicholas Flamel himself. 10 are all intentionally or unintentionally asking about the Philosopher's Stone. In the crowd, Luna glanced at Aris and then walked over. Brother, is this a teleportation magic circle? Luna had known that Aris was researching this, and now seeing him here with Nicolael, she had a rough idea in her mind, so she asked as if to confirm. Well, this magic circle can lead to Nick Flamel's residence, maybe, it will lead to Hogwarts in the future. At that time, if you miss me, you can teleport to Hogwarts through the magic circle, or I can teleport back to meet you. Aris smiled gently and patted the little girl's head gently. Really? Luna's eyes lit up slightly. Then, she looked at the magic circle under her feet, as if she was muttering to herself, or as if she was talking to Aris. It is simply a perfect art, able to travel through space, and does not require a specific channel like the Flow network. Can I experience the teleportation effect of this magic circle? She suddenly asked with shining eyes. Of course. Aris nodded with a smile, there will definitely be opportunities in the future. Brother, you always give people unexpected surprises, and shocking things. Luna looked at Aris carefully, her eyes full of admiration. Sometimes I even thought that you might not belong to this world at all. Everything about you is so incredible, it even makes people feel a little scared. Why, Luna is afraid of me too. Aris frowned slightly. He was somewhat impressed by the little girl's sixth sense. How could you guess so accurately? Although, Gu-Na might have just used a more exaggerated statement to describe him. Of course not. Luna gently tapped her chin, and said coquettishly and seriously, in my eyes, although my brother is mysterious, he always gives people a very feeling safe. Only those with impure minds can see the evil in human nature. This sentence will never be out of date and will always be true. You are the only smart one. Aris shook his head in amusement. Over there, under the siege of Harry and others, Nick Flamel was already a little overwhelmed. Normally, he seldom interacted with wizards and just liked to stay alone in the laboratory. Especially at this time, he was facing several fanatical little wizards. It's normal to be unable to bear it. Aris, I suddenly remembered that there are still some things to deal with in the laboratory. Let's go back quickly. Looking at the alchemist who was fleeing in a somewhat embarrassed manner, Bingley shook his head with amusement. Then, he half bowed very gentlemanly and said, I'm happy to be of service. Then, he glanced at Harry and the others and reminded them, we will be going back to school in a few days. You must hurry up and practice. You won't have such a good opportunity to concentrate on learning elemental magic after you return to school. We get it. Harry nodded. Several other young wizards also nodded. Aris glanced at Nick Flamel, who was winking at him, and smiled. Then, the magic circle was restarted. The blue light flashed again. But this time, Luna also followed Aris. Chapter 130. Hogwarts Express. After Christmas, the new semester begins. After 2 weeks of special training, Harry and the others all had smiles on their faces and looked very excited. These 2 weeks were really difficult for them. When they were taking part in Aris's special training, they actually missed their days at Hogwarts very much. However, at this time, the little wizards also had strong expectations in their hearts. I wonder how surprised Fred and the others will be when they see me cast the fireball spell. I can't wait to see their naive expressions. Ronald said with a look of longing on his face. I think they will regret not joining Aris' special training together. Harry shrugged, obviously not very interested in such showing off. Since entering the wizarding world, he has received enough attention because of his identity. What I'm most worried about now is whether Professor McGonagall will still remember that we sneaked out. Professor Dumbledore should have communicated with her, right? Ronald's face suddenly fell again. It should be fine. Harry hesitated for a moment, then said with certainty, Dumbledore will definitely do what he said, and this matter should have passed too. I hope so. Ronald nodded with a wry smile. By the way, do you remember Hagrid's dragon egg? At this time, Hermione suddenly said, calculating the time, the dragon egg should be hatching soon, right? I remember the time Hagrid mentioned, which was shortly after Christmas. Yes, it should be soon. Harry's eyes lit up slightly. I wonder how Hagrid's dragon compares to Iris? Speaking of which, it seems like we haven't seen Iris for a long time, right? Aris, did you ask her to do something? Several people looked at the boy who had been resting with his eyes closed in the corner. Hearing Harry's words, Aris slowly opened his eyes and stretched. Yes, I asked her to go back to school first. Dumbledore said earlier that there was something wrong with the centaurs, so Aris asked the little red dragon to go back to the Forbidden Forest first. After dealing with the pureblood wizards, there wouldn't be any danger anyway. Besides, the Barton family is now convinced of Aris, and Henry is often in the castle, so there is basically no need to worry about his safety. Back to the Forbidden Forest. Harry seemed to have thought of something. He still remembered that Iris had a lair in the Centaur tribe. Although the cave building did not look like a dragon's lair, it looked more like a storage room built by the little red dragon to make money. Yet. Aris nodded and closed his eyes again. He stayed up all night again last night. Nick Flamel insisted that he prepare a manual on the care and maintenance of the magic circle, as well as some information about elemental magic before he left. In the last few days, Aris was always involved in elemental magic. Nick Flamel is obviously very interested in elemental magic. According to the living fossil of the wizarding world, the elemental magic system once circulated in the wizarding world, but it seemed to have experienced a wizarding disaster and gradually disappeared. In addition, the practice of elemental magic was too difficult, and the system gradually lost its inheritance. This also explains why there are records about elemental magic and magic circles in Merlin's handbook. Perhaps in that era, the elemental magic system could not be considered the orthodox system of the world. Nick Flamel also said that compared with the current spell system, the elemental magic system will have a wider range of functions, huge potential, and be more extensible. To put it bluntly, the current spell system is nothing more than the result of the wizarding world's wrong additions. It has all been developed towards convenience, speed, time-saving and labor-saving aspects, while ignoring the underlying foundation of the system. Many spells, aside from their specific effects, have absolutely no effect at all. Elemental magic is different. Once you get started, there are endless possibilities. Like magic circles, magic alchemy, magic technology, etc. These are all based on the elemental energy system, and they will appear when they develop to a certain level. In terms of potential, the current spell system in the wizarding world is still far behind. At this moment, the door of the box was suddenly opened. Harry turned his head and frowned. Malfoy, what are you doing here? Aris opened his eyes and looked towards the door of the box. Sure enough, Malfoy was standing there with a complicated expression, and didn't even pay attention to what Harry said. He bowed to Aris. Then, without saying anything, he turned and left. He even considerately closed the door of the box. What is he doing? Harry and Ronald were both stunned by the scene. Could it be a change of character? Ronald gave Aris a strange look, and then continued, he wasn't so polite before, this is so strange. Maybe, it's because Aris is here. Hermione glanced at the boy thoughtfully, obviously having noticed something. They had all read about what had happened at Malfoy Manor in the newspapers, and thought about the fate of those pure-blood wizards and the Malfoy family who had not responded directly to the matter. The clever little witch has roughly deduced what happened. Now, seeing Malfoy's reaction, I am even more certain. I suddenly feel a little sorry for Malfoy. Hermione sighed and shook her head with some emotion. Why? Ronald still looked puzzled, obviously he hadn't figured out the truth of the matter yet. Did something happen between him and Aris? Have you forgotten what Aris did at Malfoy Manor? At this time, Harry seemed to have reacted. Although he was not sure whether his guess was correct, he felt that it should be related to that incident. Malfoy Manor. Ronald fell into deep thought. However, looking at his expression, he was still a little confused. Aris listened to what they said without explaining and closed his eyes again. I'm so sleepy. So sleepy. At this time, he had no interest in anything. As for Malfoy, he should have accepted his fate. However, this is actually a good thing. If the Malfoy family can be obedient, they will be on a bright road. As for Draco's little self-esteem, it is really insignificant. Is there anything shameful in being Aris Shafak's younger brother? Besides, he had never thought of ordering the former Master Malfoy around. The train was running on a plane that looked like a landscape painting. The lake that occasionally passes by the window is like a bright gem dotted in the turquoise ocean. A compartment at the front of the train. Dumbledore was sitting quietly opposite another silver-haired old wizard. I'm afraid even Aris didn't expect that these two would take the same train with them, nor did she expect that Dumbledore and Grindelwald would sit together so calmly. So, you escaped because of that child. Dumbledore's voice was a little low, and he was obviously still a little angry. He had always been worried that Grindelwald would come down from the tower. Although he had prepared himself mentally, he still couldn't help but worry when he really met Grindelwald outside Nermangard. You should have thought of that a long time ago, right? As the two people who know each other best, Grindelwald knew clearly what Dumbledore was thinking at the moment, which was why he came to see Dumbledore. Because of some common ideas, the two of them may come together and fight side by side again. Grindelwald was very happy about this. He thought that Dumbledore would feel the same way. What kind of future do you see in that child? Dumbledore frowned slightly, and then added, or what do you want to get from him? If that's the case, I advise you to give up this idea this morning. After so many years, your misunderstanding of me seems to be getting deeper and deeper. Grindelwald also frowned and snorted coldly, the reason why we failed to do what we wanted to do was because you betrayed that ideal. Because that was wrong, and you have been walking on the wrong path. Dumbledore's voice also increased a little, and the two of them suddenly became somewhat tit for tat. I know, I understand, I know I shouldn't bring this up again. Grindelwald shook his head, then smiled self-deprecatingly, so I lost, the facts prove that you XJ8. But this time, we should have the same idea, right? I just want to know, what are you going to do? Dumbledore looked calmly at his former friend. In the future, he will be the protagonist of this world. You should have seen it. Grindelwald looked at Dumbledore seriously, with calmness in his eyes. You really don't plan to do anything? Of course I will. Grindelwald suddenly smiled. What I have to do is to ensure the safety of the child before that brilliant world arrives. I will ruthlessly wipe out anyone or anything that may pose a threat to him. I think you will agree with my approach, right? I just hope you won't be too extreme. Some things are not as simple as they seem. Dumbledore frowned even deeper. Although he will try his best to protect Aris, his method will definitely be different from Grindelwald's. He knew Grindelwald's style too well and always felt that this guy would mess things up. Or, it may cause the entire wizarding world to become panic-stricken. If such a turbulent situation occurs again, it will not be a good thing for Aris. Over the years, your misunderstanding of me seems to have become deeper and deeper. Grindelwald suddenly smiled, and his eyes slowly turned silver-white. I can see everything in the future clearly. I know what to do to be the best choice for that child. I also know, there are some things you can't do. So, cooperating with each other without interfering with each other is the best choice for that boy, or for the world. Even if some things are a little extreme, it is necessary. Hearing this, Dumbledore fell silent. After a moment, he raised his head, and a gleam of wisdom flashed in his eyes. No matter what, I will stick to my own ideas, and I hope you can take care of yourself. Don't forget, I will always be watching you. As they spoke, they both stood up at the same time. This also means that the meeting and conversation have come to a successful conclusion. Oh, right. Just as Grindelwald was about to leave the box, he suddenly looked at Dumbledore again. I heard that the Professor of Defense against the Dark Arts in your school changes every year. Where did you hear that rumor? Dumbledore didn't want to admit it at all. It's not important. What's important is... 5.2 Grindelwald suddenly smiled. He nodded to Dumbledore in a gentlemanly manner. If you need a professor this September, perhaps I can do it. No need. Dumbledore refused without even thinking. What a joke, letting the great devil who almost subverted the entire wizarding world become a professor at Hogwarts. Even if the young wizards are willing, the school's parents' association and directors probably won't be willing. I mean it. No, they might just go crazy. Oh, do you have a better candidate? Grindelwald asked unwillingly. Of course, I have already negotiated with Mr. Gilderoy Lockhart, and he has also expressed some intentions. I think Hogwarts will not be without defense against the dark arts. Professor. Dumbledore's meaningful eyes revealed a hint of vigilance. Lockhart? Are you talking about Gilderoy Lockhart? Grindelwald asked thoughtfully, the famous writer who holds the Order of Merlin. I didn't know that you would know all this just after coming out of Nermangard. Dumbledore remained silent and mocked secretly. Of course, as I said, I will pay special attention to certain parts of that boy's future. Grindelwald shrugged and sighed, it seems that you won't agree no matter what, so, forget it. After saying this, he did not stay in the box any longer and turned to leave. Watching Grindelwald's departing back, Dumbledore always had a bad feeling. It seems that the guy has some plan that he doesn't know about. Chapter 131. Early morning. It was the first week after the holidays and all the little wizards were busy as hell. Some were making up for their holiday homework. Since many little wizards had forgotten to do their homework, the professors were very humane and gave them a week. If you fail to make up for it within a week, you will face very severe punishment. Of course, they cannot be exempted from this week's homework. During breakfast, Harry and Reese received a letter at the same time. It's a letter from Hagrid. Harry looked at Aris. He invited us to watch the ceremony, saying that. Harry looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to their conversation, so he whispered, it is said that the dragon eggs will hatch soon, and it should be tonight. Really? Then we can go there in the afternoon. Ronald's eyes lit up. Anyway, today is the weekend and we can't go to Hogsmeade. I think it's okay. It's a dragon. Although it's definitely not as powerful as Iris, it's still a dragon, right? Aris nodded slightly, thought for a moment and said, I should have no problem. I will try to make time. Besides, Iris will also be interested in dealing with the little dragon. I will ask her to come along when the time comes. Then, the three of them looked at Hermione again. Of course I have no problem. Who doesn't want to see a dragon? Right. The little witch also shrugged. The few of them finished their breakfast quickly as they had other things to do today. For example, Harry had always wanted to try out his new invisibility cloak. Someone had put the cloak on his bed in the dormitory. It looked like a Christmas gift, but he swore he had no idea who had given it to him. But the note inside the box clearly stated that the cloak was for him. It seemed that the cloak originally belonged to his father, which surprised him. Ronald was going to stay in the Gryffindor common room for a day to explain his fireball spell to his classmates. He heard that many people were interested in this spell. Of course, he thought the most important thing was that holding a fireball with one hand was just too cool. 30 For example, Seamus was very interested in fireball and kept pestering Ronald to teach him the spell. Naturally, Hermione went to the lab with Aris. In the past few days, she has been learning new elemental magic and the specific application of elemental energy in spells from Aris. She feels that her strength has really improved a lot compared to before. Therefore, she is always eager to get Aris guidance. There will be no more feelings of embarrassment or tsundere. In fact, the main reason was that she had become accustomed to Aris's guidance during the holidays, and over time she had put aside her inner pride. After the few people left the hall, two sneaky figures suddenly came to Malfoy's side at the Slytherin table and sat down. "Master Malfoy, did you hear that?" Goyle and Black looked around mysteriously and asked in a low voice. "What?" Malfoy looked up impatiently. "Just now, Harry Potter and the others were talking about dragon eggs that were about to be born." Goyle explained, squinting his eyes and whispering, "Do you think they are planning to break the school rules?" "Dragon eggs?" Malfoy frowned. "It seems that the gamekeeper Hagrid got a dragon egg or something." Black added, "Do you think they will be punished if we tell others about this?" "You two have nothing to do," Malfoy said unhappily and turned to leave. However, as soon as he stood up, he was pushed back by Goyle and Black. "Draco, don't you want revenge? Harry Potter is so against you, don't you want to teach him a lesson? Yet, what happened to you? You seem to be a little strange since you came back from vacation. You ignored us when we contacted you. Did we do something wrong?" Goyle and the other man looked at Malfoy with some confusion, and there was a hint of doubt in their eyes. "You'd better not mess with them." Thinking of Aris's methods, Malfoy couldn't help but shudder, but at this time, he didn't dare to say anything more, and could only warn, "Harry Potter and Master Aris have a good relationship. If you don't want to be killed inexplicably, you'd better not provoke them." "Shafik." Goyle was stunned for a moment, then looked at Malfoy strangely. "What did you call Shafik just now?" "Master Aris. What's wrong with you? Why do you seem so respectful to Shafik? I heard from Pansy and the others that you seemed to bow to Shafik on the train. What are you thinking?" Black also frowned and looked at Malfoy, as if he had just met him for the first time. "Anyway, you'd better listen to what I say, otherwise don't blame me for not reminding you." After saying that, Malfoy turned and left. Goyle and Black were left standing there staring at each other. "What should we do now?" Goyle asked, looking at Black. "These two smart guys usually follow Malfoy, and Malfoy basically makes the decisions on everything. They have never thought about how to make a decision on their own. How about we tell Professor Snape about this?" Black suggested. "That makes sense. This way we don't have to face Shafik, and we can also teach them a lesson. It sounds like the best of both worlds." Gore's eyes lit up. "Well, I heard from them that they will go to Hagrid's cabin at night. Let's tell the professor about this after dinner. By then, they will definitely not be able to escape." After making the decision, the two of them tacitly restrained the smiles on their faces. Afterwards, he pretended nothing had happened, took a few donuts, and left the auditorium. In the evening, after dinner, Bingris and his companions hurried to Hagrid's cabin. On the way, Aris summoned the little red dragon back. After playing in the Forbidden Forest for a while, Iris has obviously grown up a lot. Her belly looks a little fatter, especially the two dragon horns on her forehead, which are actually shining faintly. "Hi, Elise." Hermione greeted the little red dragon immediately. Afterwards, the two of them hugged each other and started playing together. Even Aris was thrown aside by the little red dragon. If Aris didn't know that the little red dragon was a girl, he would even suspect that this little lecherous dragon only chose to get into the arms of girls. Usually, her attitude towards boys like Harry was indifferent. Very proud. Crunch. Aris and his friends had just arrived at Hagrid's cabin when the gate opened. It was as if Hagrid had been looking out the door. "Oh, thank God you are finally here." Hagrid greeted several young wizards, then looked at Aris. "Aris, come and have a look, this little guy should be coming out soon. You should have more experience in this area. What was Iris like when she was born?" "Oh, my God, I'm so nervous. I don't know if this little guy will recognize me. You know, I've been looking forward to his birth for nearly a month." "Don't worry, Hagrid." Aris comforted him. He looked at the little fire dragon egg and then said with certainty, "He should be born soon, but he may need more time." In fact, Aris had no idea when the little Charmander would be born. When Iris was born, he basically had no contribution except for a drop of blood, and he didn't even need to be hatched. The system took care of the whole process. But since Hagrid is certain that the little one will hatch today, then he must be right. Time passes by little by little. Hagrid brought food to Aris and the others, including some very hard biscuits and some greasy sweet candies. Aris was wise enough to stay away from both of these things. Harry and Ronald, who didn't know the truth, ate the food. One of them almost broke his teeth, while the other drank a large glass of water out of disgust. It is worth mentioning that the pumpkin juice here at Hagrid is pretty good. Perhaps because of the hybrid cultivation, it has a very strange flavor, but it unexpectedly suits Aris's taste. This is the only thing he can eat here. Here it comes, there's movement. At this moment, Ronald, who had been staring at the dragon egg, suddenly let out a cry. Radish, it's about to be born, it's really about to be born. Hagrid suddenly burst into tears, with an expression like an old mother looking at her own son, her eyes fixed on the dragon egg in the crucible, her hands so nervous that she didn't know where to put them. Carrot. Hermione looked at Aris strangely. Hagrid even named the dragon that hasn't been born yet? It's too outrageous. Why, do you think there's something wrong with him raising a dragon? Aris asked with interest. Of course there is a problem. Hermione whispered without hesitation. Professor Dumbledore wouldn't allow him to have a dragon here, would he? Then why did the professor allow me to keep a dragon here? Aris said, gently lifting Iris's chin, looking like he was teasing a puppy. This action immediately caused Iris to be dissatisfied. Of course Elise is different. Hermione held the little red dragon in her arms seriously. She is our partner, and her wisdom is far superior to those other dragons. How can she be the same? Of course, I was just talking casually. Feeling the little red dragon's resentful gaze, Aris tactfully ended the topic and touched his nose awkwardly. Soon, everyone's attention was attracted by the little fire dragon on the crucible. At this time, a crack had appeared on the shell of the fire dragon egg. And it is constantly making a clicking sound. Hagrid knew that the fire dragon was about to be born, so he quickly put on a pair of thick gloves, then took the fire dragon egg out of the extremely hot crucible and placed it on the table. Click, click, the sound of eggshells cracking became more and more frequent. On the table, the fire dragon egg was cracking at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, a tiny head suddenly broke through the eggshell and rose out. The little red dragon suddenly became excited, fluttered its wings lightly, and flew to the table, looking at the little fire dragon that had just emerged from the eggshell with a little curiosity. This little guy has a good aura in his body. Iris looked disgusted and gently scratched Charmander with her little claws. Ahem. The little dragon subconsciously took 2 steps back and coughed out some sparks from his mouth. Aris, can you please keep an eye on your dragon? It's scaring the little one. Hagrid grabbed the newly born fire dragon and stroked its back soothingly. Hagrid, I suggest you put the dragon down, otherwise it might burn your beard off when it spews fire. Thinking of the original movie, Aris kindly reminded of the plot inside. It's okay, the little guy is still young and may not be able to breathe fire yet. Hagrid continued to attack the little dragon without caring. Woo! Charmander rubbed the back of Hagrid's hand affectionately. Then, as expected, some sparks came out of his mouth. The sparks were very hot and they immediately started burning when they touched Hagrid's beard. The whole room was immediately filled with a burning smell. Hagrid! Harry and the others looked like they wanted to laugh but didn't dare to. They forced themselves to find some water, which helped Hagrid save his half-slim Tehu. Child! I knew it! Aris shook his head helplessly. You naughty boy, don't play with fire! Iris roared at the fierce little fire dragon. Perhaps it was because of the powerful pressure from the dark red dragon, or the absolute blood suppression of the species, but Charmander was obviously frightened at this time, and shrank in Hagrid's arms in fear. Then he lowered his head towards Iris, showing submission. Aris, your dragon is a bit too much. Hagrid couldn't stand it and couldn't help complaining. You big BD, I'm obviously standing up for you. Or should I let it burn all your beard off? Humph. Iris raised her head with a proud look on her face and snorted coldly. Okay, Iris. Aris held the little red dragon in her arms and comforted it gently. Hagrid is just a little worried about the little red dragon, and he doesn't mean to blame you. Then he said to Hagrid, are you going to keep this dragon in the house? This is obviously inappropriate. Otherwise, tell Dumbledore and let him stay with Iris. Let's go deep into the Forbidden Forest. Otherwise, the parents of those students and the shareholders of the school would not allow this little guy to be here, and its existence may have been known to others. Aris's eyes suddenly focused, and before anyone could react, he stretched out his hand and waved out the window. A cry of surprise suddenly rang out. Apparently, someone was sneaking outside. Listen! Draco! Aris asked confused. He originally thought that, given his relationship with the Malfoy family. This guy shouldn't be here anymore. But, what is the situation now? Master Aris, I came here to tell you. Malfoy spoke as soon as he was discovered again, with a trace of panic on his face. Goyle and Brack overheard your conversation. I should have told the professor what happened here by now. Just as Malfoy finished speaking, a sinister voice suddenly came from outside. It seems a bit late to come and tip off now, isn't it? Snape's voice was heard by everyone. 0139041330 Falcon 230311101. The little wizards present were all shocked, and then an idea suddenly popped into their minds. It's over. I was caught violating school rules. And Snape discovered the secret here. This punishment seems to be inevitable. Chapter 132. I didn't go back to the dormitory at night and went to the Forbidden Forest for a night walk. You even want to follow this big fool into the Forbidden Forest? You were just discussing this matter, right? I will report this matter to Professor Dumbledore truthfully, Hagrid. And you? Snape's eyes suddenly turned to Malfoy. I can't believe you were involved in this matter. What did you just say? Tip them off. When did you become so close to these people? In that case, you will be punished together with them. Snape looked at Aris with a gloating expression and said, Master Shafik, I didn't expect you to hold out for a whole semester and only end up in my hands now. You have nothing to say now, right? All the little wizards in Hagrid's hut lowered their heads and dared not speak. Don't say you did something wrong. Even under normal circumstances, they would not be afraid if they met Snape. Especially Harry and Ronald. The points they were deducted by Snape last semester probably added up to more than 100 points, which is equivalent to nearly 1/3 of the entire college's points. One can imagine how desperate they were at that moment. If the little wizards of Gryffindor woke up tomorrow morning and suddenly found that all their house points had been deducted, Harry and Ronald didn't even dare to think about the scene. Professor Snape, I think you misunderstood. Aris frowned slightly, and then a smile appeared on his face. We are just invited by Hagrid to visit his home. Right, Hagrid? Being a guest? Do you have to come and be a guest at night and violate school rules? Snape still had that mocking sneer on his face. Snape, I did invite them here. I wanted them to watch it together. Hagrid, who was so honest, almost let out all his secrets as soon as he opened his mouth. Seeing this, Aris interrupted him. Hagrid wants to invite us to see his new cookies. They taste pretty good. How about Professor Snape try some too? Aris picked up the hard biscuit on the table and handed it to Snape. You should keep this for yourselves. Snape glanced at the biscuits in Aris's hand with disdain, and then warned again in a cold voice, I said I would report everything that happened tonight to Professor Dumbledore. Also, I heard you have a dragon. Fortunately, Malfoy's appearance alerted Aris, and he summoned Iris back to the pet space immediately. As for the little fire, now I am staying in Aris's storage box. Although it's called a box, it's actually not that big. He uses it to store some living experiment materials. In addition to the traceless extension spell, some special magic has also been cast on it. Those magics can ensure that living things can survive for a short period of time in the box, just like the box that Uncle Newt, a protector of magical animals, has been carrying in his hand. Of course, Aris's little box is far less magical than Newt's box. But it is enough to hold a small fire dragon. What did you say, dragon? Aris looked at Snape in an exaggerated manner, then looked at Harry and the others in a surprised manner. In the stunned expressions of Harry and the others, he shouted exaggeratedly, how could there be a dragon here? Professor Snape, are you saying that a dragon is going to come to Hogwarts? If so, will we be harmed? Please find the dragon as soon as possible and subdue it, otherwise it may cause unimaginable consequences, right, Harry? Harry was silent for a moment, as if he hadn't figured it out yet. But soon, he began to nod his head, that's right, how could there be a dragon here? If there is one, it must be in the Forbidden Forest, right? We were just discussing. Maybe there really is a dragon in the Forbidden Forest. As he said that, Harry looked at Aris with a strange expression. He had never seen a young wizard lie so well before, which made him a little unsure whether this Aris was still the one they knew. The contrast was too great. Ronald, Hagrid, and Hermione also had puzzled expressions, but at this moment they all chose to keep their mouths shut tacitly, especially Hagrid, who just realized that he almost exposed Charmander Carrot. If Snape really knew there was a dragon here, the consequences would definitely be more serious. Who knows, the Ministry of Magic might send someone to take Charmander away tomorrow. At this moment, he was filled with joy. The look he gave Aris was full of gratitude. That's enough. Stop showing off your poor acting skills here. Snape suddenly snorted again, then stared at Aris meaningfully and said, I know Dumbledore is biased towards you. But this time, I don't believe he will let you do whatever you want. After saying that, he began to search around the room. Obviously, he must have received clear information that there was a dragon in the house. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so concerned and want to search it again. However, Aris hid the small box very well, and it was now lying quietly in the system space. It was impossible for Snape to find it. If living things could be placed in the system space, he wouldn't have needed to get that small box. It would definitely be safe to store things in the system space. How can there be none? This shouldn't be the case. Snape looked around but couldn't find the Charmander. He looked around the table again, then picked up a small piece of eggshell and looked at Hagrid with a gloomy look. You're not going to tell me this is an eggshell? What's the problem, Professor Snape? Those are eggshells, and they look like turkey eggs. Maybe they were laid by the turkey that Hagrid ate at Christmas, and he roasted them and ate them? Once again, Aris defended himself before Hagrid could speak. Aris, that's enough. Snape suddenly growled, do you think I'm a fool? Or someone who has only a vague understanding of potion ingredients and thinks he's a potion master after reading a few books? Can I not tell the difference between a dragon eggshell and a chicken eggshell? You'd better not challenge my patience again. Hand over that damn dragon. Aris frowned, then sighed softly in his heart. Great. As expected of Snape, he didn't get fooled. The Hogwarts potions master was indeed very skilled. He recognized it as a dragon eggshell at a glance. However, Aris had already made up his mind at this time and would never hand over the little dragon. He just didn't believe that Snape could find the fire dragon from the system space. Hey, the main point is that there is no evidence of death, it's just a lie, what's wrong with that? I'm sorry, Professor Snape, I don't know what you are talking about. We violated the school rules and went out for a night out today, but I really didn't see the dragon, so don't slander me. Aris sat down directly, looking like he understood that someone was playing tricks on him and was waiting to be dealt with. Seeing that expression, Snape was so angry that he almost pulled out his wand. Chapter 133. Aris, to be honest, if you had been a little nicer to Professor Snape, you might not have been punished to patrol the Forbidden Forest, but might have been punished to copy papers or something like that. The next evening, after the last class, Aris and his classmates were punished as expected. In addition to the three saviors, there are Malfoy and Hagrid. Of course, Aris was there too. This time, due to Snape's strong request, Dumbledore could only helplessly give them the heaviest punishment, just like in the original book, to enter the Forbidden Forest to investigate the abnormal death of unicorns. Relatively speaking, this punishment is indeed extremely terrifying for other little wizards in the castle. At this moment, Hermione was helplessly analyzing the whole incident. However, some people hold different opinions. Copying the paper as punishment? Ronald exclaimed. You actually think that copying a paper is a lighter punishment than patrolling the Forbidden Forest? Why do I feel that this is pretty good too, just treat it as a way to digest the food after dinner. Anyway, we haven't been to the Forbidden Forest for a long time. Hearing this, Hermione rolled her eyes in annoyance, but after thinking about it carefully, she did not refute. Indeed, with Aris around, it seemed that they came to the Forbidden Forest just to eat in the restaurant. There is no danger at all. Just one dark red dragon, Aris, is enough to suppress the whole place. To help digestion after a meal. At this point, Malfoy finally couldn't help himself, and asked with a puzzled and somewhat nervous expression, you actually think that coming to the Forbidden Forest so late is a walk after a meal? What else? Harry, Ronald, and Hermione asked at the same time. Are you crazy? Malfoy looked at Harry and the other two with a strange expression on his face. This is the Forbidden Forest. Even in the entire wizarding world, the Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts is famous. Some wizards even use the Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts to scare disobedient children, saying that if things get tougher, they'll throw you into the Forbidden Forest. You know, it's rumored that there are werewolves here. Aren't you afraid at all? Werewolf. Ronald scratched his head and then sneered, is it scary? You've seen a dragon, but you're still so timid. How boring. Who has seen a dragon? Malfoy's face froze unnaturally. Don't pretend, you must have seen everything from outside the window yesterday. Ronald pouted, but I'm a little surprised that you didn't complain to Professor Snape. If you tell others about the little red dragon, Deke, maybe you can be exempted from punishment this time. Shut up. Malfoy suddenly growled, and said fiercely, how could I betray Master Aris? I have my bottom line. He subconsciously glanced at Aris, fearing that the boy would be angry with him because of Ronald's words. Fortunately, Aris didn't seem to pay much attention to the conversation between the few people from the beginning. He just walked around and looked around, as if he really came here to digest his food after dinner. He even saw Aris stop several times and look carefully at a nest of magical animals of unknown species on the side of the road. He seemed to be quite interested in them. There was no sense of nervousness at all. Only then did he feel something was wrong. It seems, except for him, no one else is that nervous. What is going on? Is it because of Hagrid, or is it because of the big pug named Yaya following behind? This is so weird. Ronald had come to Harry's side, gently touched his best friend with his shoulder, and then said strangely, why did Wolf suddenly become like this? It seems that they have become Goyle and Black. Becoming Aris's little follower. Harry smiled and spoke for Ronald. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. Ronald nodded quickly, don't you think it's weird? He even called Aris, Master. I don't think there's any problem. At this time, Hermione's voice interrupted from the side. Aris is originally the young master of the Shafik family, A&D. Shafik has a high reputation among pure-blood wizards. Don't you know that? How could I possibly? Ronald subconsciously wanted to refute, but after thinking carefully, he still frowned and asked, could it be that Malfoy is so cowardly because he is afraid of Aris? Of course, this is the only explanation. Hermione nodded affirmatively. Wow! At this moment, Ronald seemed to recognize Aris again, and turned his head involuntarily to look at the boy who was waving his wand not far away, attracting a bunch of glowing magical animals. Aris is amazing. She can actually conquer someone like Malfoy. He could even conquer the Centaur tribe, let alone a Malfoy. Hermione curled her lips, seeming speechless at Ronald's belated realization. This clear stupidity made her feel helpless. On the other side, seeing that no one paid attention to him, Malfoy couldn't help but move towards Hagrid carefully. Hagrid. How far should we go? We are deep in the Forbidden Forest, right? If we continue forward, we are likely to encounter werewolves. Maybe we should turn back now, right? Don't worry, you'll be fine. Hagrid glanced at Malfoy, shrugged indifferently, and then suddenly clapped his hands, attracting everyone's attention. Everybody come over here and listen to me. Harry and his companions quickly took a few steps towards this side and looked at Hagrid. Aris also turned his head, but his attention still seemed not focused. Because his eyes still looked a little scattered. Seems to be thinking about something. At this time, Hagrid's voice sounded again, I think you all know our mission today. Harry and Ronald nodded. During this period, a unicorn was attacked in the Forbidden Forest. This is a very serious matter. Hagrid's tone became very serious, and he seriously explained, unicorns are sacred. Pure and poses no threat to anyone. Only the most evil things would want to harm such a kind creature. I guess there must be another outsider invading the Forbidden Forest, and it's a very evil guy. The Centaur tribe has also found some clues. Maybe more than 10 of them will join us in the future. As he spoke, Hagrid couldn't help but glance at Aris. At this time, Aris finally came back to his senses and muttered thoughtfully, so, has Frunza discovered something again? With his ability, it seems possible. However, is it true that Lao Fu sucked the blood of the unicorn just to maintain his life? If that was the case, he should have started it last semester and not waited until now. At this time, Reese's thoughts became clearer and clearer. Voldemort was very well behaved last semester and did not cause any trouble in the Forbidden Forest. At that time, he had plenty of life. Didn't he need unicorn blood? Or maybe, he sucked the unicorn's blood not just to maintain his life. The most important purpose is to restore strength. Chapter 134. Centaurs. Malfoy's eyes flickered slightly. I heard that they are not very friendly to humans. Are you sure they won't attack us? Malfoy's words attracted everyone's attention. Harry and the others all looked at each other strangely, but Hagrid just smiled innocently. Aris didn't say anything, just shook his head slightly. Malfoy was confused, not knowing what he had said wrong. In his impression, the creatures in the Forbidden Forest seemed to be difficult to mess with. However, today, the expressions of these people after entering the Forbidden Forest were always not right, which made him very confused and even began to doubt himself. What did I say wrong? He asked cautiously and tentatively. No. Harry shook his head, but there was still a strange smile on his face. At this moment, he suddenly felt a little sympathy for his old rival Malfoy, because he really looked like a clown who knew nothing. You'll know in a moment. Ronald looked at Malfoy meaningfully, and even patted him on the shoulder, acting like an elder brother who had been through it all. What a weird thing. Malfoy was so angry that his teeth ached. He slapped Ronald's hand away in disgust and couldn't help muttering. Okay, let's keep moving forward. Hagrid didn't want to waste any more time, so he led the group forward. At this moment, there was a sudden sound of horse hooves from the front. It looks like the centaurs are coming. Hermione looked up and subconsciously glanced at Aris. Why are you looking at me? Aris looked at the little witch and teased with a smile, do you feel safe around me? Arrogant. Hermione rolled her eyes, then quickly walked to Hagrid's side and ignored Aris. At this time, the sound of horse hooves was getting closer and closer, and several tall figures soon appeared in front. It's Firenze and Ronan. Harry's eyes lit up slightly. You know them. Malfoy couldn't help asking again, his face strange, but how do you know them? You can ask Aris about this question. Harry seemed to be teasing Malfoy on purpose and refused to tell him the truth, with an irritating expression of I know but I won't tell you. Malfoy was indeed furious again. Of course he didn't dare to ask Aris directly. In fact, he always stayed as far away from Aris as possible. He was worried all day long, afraid that Aris would cause trouble to him again. But soon, his attention was focused on the team of centaurs. This time the centaur team is indeed led by Firenze and Ronan. Since Aris conquered them, the centaurs have become more united than ever before. Just like the last time when Firenze knew Aris was in trouble and summoned the centaur tribe to rush out of the Forbidden Forest to help, not a single person in the entire centaur tribe objected, and they rushed to the outskirts of the Forbidden Forest in a mighty manner. If Dumbledore hadn't discovered the abnormality and stopped them, they might have really rushed to London to protect their king. My king. Firenze and others came directly in front of Aris and bowed slightly to Aris. My king. Malfoy screamed subconsciously, looking confused. He felt like he must have heard it wrong. The amount of information was too much and his brain was no longer able to process it all. Those centaurs actually called Aris king? What on earth is going on with them? Harry and Ronald glanced at Malfoy and couldn't help but snickering, thinking back to the first time they saw the centaur's attitude towards Aris, it seemed to be the same, with shock and disbelief. Now, Malfoy's expression was exactly the same as it was back then. How about it? Are you surprised? Ronald reached out and patted Malfoy on the shoulder again, with an expression that said I understand, although it's hard to believe, you're not seeing things. They're just calling Aris. At this time, Malfoy had even forgotten his dislike for Ronald and did not even notice that there was an extra hand on his shoulder. He just stared blankly at the centaurs and Aris, unable to speak for a long time. Aris ignored Malfoy, nodded slightly to Firenze, and then asked, I heard from Hagrid that you were the first to discover the abnormality in the Forbidden Forest. What else do you know about unicorns? That's right. Firenze stepped forward and replied respectfully, the guy who killed the unicorn should be related to the disaster I saw when I observed the stars last time. Now he seems to be lurking in Hogwarts. Killing such pure and kind creatures to sustain life, sucking the blood of unicorns, such evil deeds, are almost exactly the same as those of a mysterious person who cannot be named. I'm afraid he's coming for the child who was lucky enough to survive. As he spoke, Firenze looked at Harry Potter. Me? Harry was stunned. Are you targeting Harry? Ronald's eyes widened as well. You mean, that mysterious person is? Hagrid also widened his eyes at this time. We just followed the predictions of the stars and made this judgment. Firenze's voice gradually became serious, and then he continued to report to Aris, since the Christmas holiday, unicorns have begun to die in the Forbidden Forest. This is not the first time such a situation has happened today. I doubt that if we don't intervene, that guy will definitely not get worse. Firenze's words caused everyone present to fall silent. Harry, in particular, stared blankly at the darkness deep in the forest, feeling the lightning-shaped scar on his head suddenly begin to burn, and it seemed to be getting more and more painful. He didn't know whether it was an illusion or reality, but he couldn't help but cover his forehead with his hands. "Harry, what's wrong with you?" Ronald noticed the abnormality immediately. "There seems to be something over there." Harry pointed to the darkness in the distance and began to breathe heavily, unable to help but cry out in pain. "Who is it?" The centaur Ronan reacted quickly and rushed towards the direction Harry pointed with his men. Aris's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he quickened his pace and said, "Let's go and take a look." The group followed Ronan and the other centaurs and moved quickly towards the depths of the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid held the crossbow tightly in his hand, looking a little nervous. The pug Yaya beside him started barking even louder. Malfoy's face turned pale all of a sudden. A mysterious person? Someone who sucks unicorn blood? Could it be? He didn't dare to think about it. If it was really that big evil guy, the whole Hogwarts might be under great threat. He could never have imagined that a simple after-school punishment would turn out like this. If he had known that there were such strange things in the Forbidden Forest, he would never have come. No, that centaur just now seemed to say, that thing is hidden inside Hogwarts? Thinking of this, Malfoy's body couldn't help but tremble slightly. He thought of some terrible rumors in the wizarding world. The devil whose name could not even be mentioned was the one that the entire wizarding world feared and panicked about. Now, are they going to face him? No, you really don't want to think about it anymore. Seeing that the group had already gone far away, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and follow them even if he was unwilling. Chapter 135. This is it, another unicorn has died. Ronan had just chased for a short distance when he saw the dead body of an animal lying on the ground in front of him. The unicorn has pure white fur and a horn on its head. Under the moonlight, the unicorn's blood flows to the ground, reflecting the starlight. The blood is a rare silver color, which is very strange. This is the third one. Firenze followed closely behind, looking at the unicorn on the ground that had obviously just died with a complicated look, and there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Ronan, have you seen the murderer who killed the unicorn?" "No." Ronan shook his head slightly, then glanced at the darkness ahead, frowned and added, "However, it seems that a black shadow floated by. It doesn't look like a human." "Not like a human." Hagrid also caught up from behind. Next came Aris and Harry and the others. All of them were present. "That thing is indeed not like a normal human being. At least the way it moves, is very weird." Ronan organized his words and then said affirmatively. "Has he turned into some horrible monster?" Ronald's voice trembled a little. The psychological shadow that the mysterious man brought to the young wizards was too deep. Ronald had grown up listening to those horrific rumors. If he really had to face Voldemort, he would probably fall to the ground immediately. It's not a question of courage or not. Just like in the Muggle world, if the tiger that your parents used to scare you when you were a child suddenly appeared in front of you one day, you would probably be unable to move because your legs were weak. Ah! At this moment, Harry suddenly let out a cry of pain. Then, he covered his forehead with his hands and hunched over in pain like a shrimp. "What's wrong, Harry?" Ronald immediately supported his best friend. Hermione also frowned, observing Harry's condition carefully. "It looks like his scar is hurting. Has this happened before?" "No. No." Harry endured the pain and said in a trembling voice, "It has only appeared a few times since I came to Hogwarts. Before that, it has never." "Refresh your mind." Aris drew out her wand and cast a spell on Harry. A cool feeling immediately flooded into Harry's mind, reducing his pain. Thank you Aris, I must learn this spell, or I might die of pain next time." Aris shook his head slightly and said, "This spell can only temporarily suppress your pain, and the effect is not very good. However, your pain is only occasional, maybe it will get better." He knew very well that the fundamental reason why Harry Potter's lightning-shaped scar hurt was because of the induction between it and Voldemort's soul. The closer it was to Voldemort's other residual souls, the more intense the pain would be. Sometimes, pain would occur due to the connection between the Horcruxes. If you want to solve this problem completely, you must learn the art of brain closure and be able to use your consciousness to resist that connection freely, so that you can truly solve the problem. But obviously, the current Harry Potter does not have this ability. Therefore, he could only use a spell to strengthen his mental will to relieve the pain. At this moment, Aris seemed to suddenly sense something, and turned his gaze to the darkness in the distance of the Forbidden Forest. His sharp eyes seemed to see something in the darkness. At the same time, a dark shadow was looking at the direction Aris was looking at, quietly watching the group of people. Damn it, why is that guy here too? And the Centaur tribe, haven't they always remained neutral? Could it be that they want to personally destroy the neutrality that they have built up over so many years? A low voice, as if coming from the abyss of hell, rang out in the darkness. The voice was very light, as if talking to oneself, or as if talking to someone. Master, are you talking about that Shafik? Another timid voice sounded. Who else but him? I thought you were talking about Harry Potter. That stupid Harry Potter is not worth my fear at all. Only Shafik has grown too fast. Even now I can't see his strength clearly. No, we must recover more strength as soon as possible. If we delay any longer, I'm afraid there will be more trouble. The low voice became smaller, and soon, the figure slithered like a snake and disappeared into the darkness. He's gone. Aris's calm voice rang out in the team. Hagrid's eyes suddenly became stern, and he frowned and asked, he was really here just now? Yet. Aris didn't hide it and nodded directly. So, he's really back. Hagrid's expression became more and more serious, and the faces of the others turned pale, especially Malfoy, who trembled slightly after hearing this. It can't be considered as coming back. He is just a remnant soul that is trying to survive. We don't need to be afraid of him now. What we should worry about is that he must be planning something behind the scenes. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been lurking in Hogwarts all this time. Being under Dumbledore's nose is not something he is willing to do. Isn't he dead? Ronald's face was still pale, but he couldn't help but ask, 11 years ago, when Harry was born, the spell rebounded, didn't it? Everyone says so. He wanted to kill Harry, but he failed and died instead. But why is he here now? This question was actually the question in the minds of everyone present, including Harry Potter. He may be the person who wants to know the answer most now. Since his parents died at the hands of Voldemort, he naturally wanted revenge if possible. This question is a bit complicated. Aris thought for a moment and said, even Dumbledore can't say that he has fully understood the mystery of magic. In some ancient and mysterious books, there are always some ways to make the dead come back to life in another way. He may have thought that this day would come, so he made preparations in advance. And the 1.4% unicorn blood can just keep the weak soul alive for a short period of time. Besides, I said that thing is not a complete person, it's just a remnant soul possessed by another person. After listening to Aris' explanation, everyone did not feel more relieved, but became more nervous. Aris, you just said, he possessed someone, who is this person? Harry frowned, looking a little angry, or maybe scared. He actually spent the entire school year in the same school with his enemy. He had never thought about such a thing. Not only Harry, but everyone else also had a look of deep uneasiness in their eyes. If he is lurking in the school and we know about his existence, will he take action immediately? What exactly does he want to do? Chapter 136. Late at night. Filch's office at Hogwarts. Although he was only the castle's gatekeeper, Filch was still equipped with a fairly large office, the drawers of which were filled with all kinds of illegal magical products he had confiscated during his tenure. There were some things that he didn't even know what they were used for, but they were still put into the box. At this time, the office door opened quietly. However, no one appeared. After the door was closed, Aris lifted the disillusionment spell and revealed his true form. After returning from the Forbidden Forest, he went back to the dormitory for a while, then sneaked out again. The purpose, of course, is to get a night-traveling artifact in Filch's office drawer, the Marauder's Map. It might not be long before Voldemort takes action, so Aris needs to make some preparations. The Marauder's Map can theoretically monitor everyone in the castle, so it is of course the best surveillance camera. With it, Bingley could at least grasp Chilo's whereabouts. You can also better deal with what happens next. This should be it. Aris remembered clearly that the Weasley twins took the Marauder's Map from the drawer in Filch's office. He felt that the Marauder's Map was most likely still there. Because yesterday he secretly probed the Weasley twins and asked about the secret passage. They showed interest, but did not show off that they knew more secret passages. So, Aris was almost certain that they hadn't gotten the map yet. Lumos. The light from the luminescent charm illuminated the small area of the office. Aris quickly locked a cabinet and added a lock on it, which made it look very mysterious, but this level of protection certainly could not stump Aris. Alaho hole opens. A unlocking spell successfully opened the drawer. Aris opened the drawer and started searching quickly. There are many drawers, filled with all kinds of mischievous magic products. It seems that Filch has spent a lot of effort to collect these things. They may even have learned painful lessons because they were not clear about the effects of certain magic products. For example, Aris saw a crystal ball from inside. He could clearly feel that the crystal ball was cast under a black fog spell. Anyone who rubs the surface of the crystal ball will trigger the spell, creating a large area of black fog, which is the best choice for creating chaos. Aris threw the crystal ball into the system space. Although it doesn't have much effect, it is still quite effective in creating some visual misleading at critical moments. Although he can make this kind of crystal ball himself, it's better to use it for the party, isn't it? Found it. After a moment, Aris pulled out a piece of parchment from the bottom of the drawer. He was sure that this was the Marauder's map. Because from this map, he sensed a very profound spell. There are concealment spells, as well as magic related to the name. Aris even felt some kind of magical contract magic from it. This map seems to have some kind of contractual relationship with the castle. From the magic contained in this map, it can be seen that the person who made the map is definitely a genius, and his ideas are very bold and careful. They may even have discovered some core secrets of the castle. For example, protective magic about permissions. Dumbledore had previously told Aris that as the headmaster he had certain privileges in the school, such as being able to apparate within the castle and being able to move portraits within the castle. These are actually all related to the castle's authority protection magic. There is also a scene that appeared in the original book, where Professor McGonagall summoned the stone pillars to fight against Voldemort's army. That is obviously the privilege only the senior management of the school has. Who's in there? At this moment, the office door was suddenly pushed open, and two furtive figures walked in. Then, the three of them were stunned. Aris. Fred George. The three of them looked at each other blankly. Well, we just saw Filch patrolling the corridor on the 4th floor, so we came here. I didn't expect you to be here too, Aris. What a coincidence. Fred looked around and breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he quickly closed the office door. Why are you here too? Aris couldn't help but roll his eyes in his heart. These two guys were indeed masters of night wandering. There was not even any sound of footsteps. He didn't even notice it until they opened the office door. I have to say, this might be some kind of talent. We were punished to clean Filch's office in the afternoon, and then we saw the locked drawer. I guess there must be a lot of good things in it, so we came. Fred shrugged and replied. That's why we specially waited for Filch to go patrol somewhere else before coming here, just in case. Who knows if we might run into other people here. George also shrugged. So, we are still a step late. Fred's eyes had already caught sight of the opened drawer, and he looked at the map in Chase's hand with some curiosity. What's this? Aris didn't intend to hide it and said directly, it should be a map. As he spoke, Aris pointed his wand at the Marauder's map and spoke softly. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. As soon as the command was spoken, a line of words suddenly appeared on the parchment where the tip of the wand was pointing. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, gentlemen who are dedicated to helping magical mischief makers, proudly present the Marauder's map. Seeing these words, Fred and George became excited instantly. It seems that the maker of this map is obviously just like us, who likes nighttime travel and some interesting magical pranks. Isn't this a coincidence? I have a feeling this must be a great invention. George said seriously. Maybe. Aris opened the parchment. As the ink spread, dense lines appeared on the parchment, and the entire map of Hogwarts appeared in front of the three of them. Is this a map? Fred's eyes lit up. This is more than just a map. George's voice was even trembling. Did you see it? Our name is on it. Look, it's right here. It says our names are in Filch's office. And here, inside the dormitory, these densely packed names actually include everyone. It's incredible. A work of absolute genius. Fred and George looked at each other, and saw something like the excitement of reaching OM in each other's eyes. This is a great product tailor-made for us. Looking at the twins who were completely immersed in self-satisfaction, Aris coughed lightly. Then, he slowly stuffed the map into his robe. Sorry, this map should belong to me now. Having said that, he walked straight out of the office without paying attention to the resentful looks from the Weasley twins. Crazy, the Weasley twins are crazy with jealousy. There was a burning light in their eyes, and they chased after Aris without thinking. Obviously, he didn't intend to miss the marauders. Map. Chapter 137. Aris, good Aris, Grandpa Aris. We promise, if you give us the map, just for a while, we'll do our best to get you whatever you want. How about butterbeer from the Three Broomsticks? Or the candy from the candy shop in Hogsmeade? First-year students can't go to Hogsmeade. If you want, we can buy it for you. Fred and George followed Aris closely. The castle was pitch black in the middle of the night, but the fire in their hearts seemed to light up the entire corridor, so hot that it was extremely intense. They really wanted that map. Aris walked along, feeling somewhat helpless as he listened to the Gemini's voice trying to please him. Actually, this map is not that useful to me. If you really want it, it's not impossible, but why don't we try to copy a copy of the map? Aris began to open their minds. We can definitely make more maps, even imitation maps with fewer functions, and sell them to other little wizards to make them happy. You know, the castle's terrain is too complicated, and the stairs are always moving around. Many young wizards may not be able to fully explore the entire castle after graduation. If we can make more maps, do you think other little wizards would like them? Hearing this, the Weasley twins' eyes gradually brightened. Yes. If we really do it, we will definitely make a lot of money. Fred and George looked at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. Their dream has always been to open a magic joke shop in Diagon Alley after graduation. If they could really make a fortune from selling maps, their grand plan might be put on the agenda now, and they could start saving for the startup capital. The more they thought about it, the more excited they became. But soon, they thought of a problem at the same time. But can this be done? George was a little uncertain. This map looks very strange. It may not be easy to copy it, especially the various magics inside. I can guarantee that even students in grade 6 or May 7th not be able to master those magics. You don't have to worry about that. Aris smiled. Aris, did you do it? Fred looked expectant. I need to study it carefully, it shouldn't be a big problem. Aris thought for a moment and then spoke. If Mooneyface and the others could create a Marauders map on their own, Aris felt that he would have no problem doing it, but it would definitely take some time. Then I'll leave the map development to you. Fred's expression became serious, and he quickly made a decision. As for the map sales, you can leave it to us. I guarantee that we will all make a lot of money. Yes, we still have some friends at school. George agreed. Aris nodded slightly. The reason why he proposed this idea was actually because he saw the Weasley twins' strong personalities. He didn't want to spend too much time selling maps. The idea of copying the map was actually just something that happened during the study of the live map. Of course, the most important thing is to give Gemini something to do. It is conceivable that if this suggestion had not been made to give them something to do, the two guys would definitely not give up the Marauders map easily, and might have pestered Aris every day. Then it's decided. You should go back quickly. Aris reminded, otherwise, Filch will come back and you won't be able to leave. Wait, Aris. Fred spoke again. How about we try this map out sometime? Yes, I just saw some secret passages of the castle marked on it. We have to explore those routes first before we know the specific purpose of this map, right? Aris thought about it, then nodded gently, no problem, let's take action on the weekend. That's a deal. The twins looked excited again. Afterwards, the two said goodbye to Aris and then walked towards the Gryffindor common room in a stealthy manner. The next day, breakfast time. Harry and a few others sat together at the long table in the auditorium, discussing something in a low voice. When Aris appeared, they waved quickly. What's wrong? Aris sat down next to them and asked in confusion, what are you trying to do this early in the morning? It's Harry. He thinks that no matter whether it's Snape or Quirrell, if they really want to do something in the castle, they will probably act soon. He thinks we need to make some preparations in advance. Perhaps we should tell Professor Dumbledore, or Professor McGonagall about this, Ronald said a little nervously. He had been feeling uneasy ever since he came back last night, thinking that there might be a Voldemort hiding in the castle. He even felt unsafe walking in the corridors of the castle, let alone sleeping soundly. He even wondered why the professors didn't make any move. But we don't have any clear evidence, everything is just speculation. Hermione analyzed calmly, if we really want to accuse someone, we should at least find something to prove it, right? Aris, what do you think? Harry Potter looked at the silver-haired boy. I think, your concerns are actually unnecessary. Professor Dumbledore may have already found out the truth of the matter, but the time has not come yet. He just needs to make some arrangements. You mean, he knows that Voldemort's spirit is hiding in the school? Harry frowned. That's just my guess. Aris shrugged. By this time, did Dumbledore know about Voldemort's plan? The answer is yes. He must know some truths, and perhaps he has roughly guessed Voldemort's plan, but as for how he plans to close the net, perhaps his idea is the same as Aris's, just waiting for Voldemort's remaining soul to fall into the trap. Judging from Quirrell's previous actions, Voldemort's remaining spirit must have known the exact location of the Philosopher's Stone. Therefore, he wanted to accumulate strength so that he could take action again. During this period, if there is any disturbance, he might change his plan. So now, doing nothing may be the best way to deal with it. Looking at Harry, who was a little eager to move, Aris ate his bread slowly and said meaningfully, if you really want to do something, then improve your strength. Maybe one day, when you really have to face him, you will have a better chance of surviving. Apart from that, are we really doing nothing? Harry gritted his teeth, and was obviously very upset. Aris even thought that he might want to go and fight Voldemort right now. Gryffindor's courage and desire to prove themselves are not undeserved. That's right, what you need most now is to remain restrained. Aris nodded gently and reminded again, understand the enemy's trump card clearly and act only when you are fully confident. This way you can protect yourself to the greatest extent and destroy the enemy's plan. Being brave does not mean being brainless. You must remember this sentence. After saying that, Aris stuffed the last piece of bread into his mouth, then stood up and slowly left the auditorium. Chapter 138. Principal's Office. Hagrid was currently reporting to Dumbledore about what happened last night. That's what happened. Aris speculated that the mysterious man might have hidden in the castle, waiting for an opportunity to complete his plan. Hagrid frowned, then shook his head slightly, apparently he hadn't thought about it that deeply. I'm not good at this kind of thing of trying to figure out other people's ideas. Perhaps you, Professor, have some ideas. Well, I know about this. Dumbledore raised his eyes from a letter on the table and turned to Hagrid. Hagrid, don't worry, leave this matter to me. After saying that, he stood up, rubbed his temple, and then continued, I heard from Snape that you seem to have raised a dragon recently. Is that true? Hearing this, Hagrid suddenly became nervous. Professor, I know this is wrong, but the little guy has just been born. It's really pitiful. I ask you to let me raise it for a while. When it grows up a little, I will hand it over to you. Dumbledore shook his head, his eyes deep, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking. Where is that little dragon now? Hagrid hesitated for a moment, sighed in frustration, and then honestly explained, Aris said he could take in Radish temporarily in case anything happened. Taken away by Aris. Dumbledore was visibly stunned. Yes, Professor. Hagrid nodded. Where can he keep that dragon? The silver-haired old wizard frowned slightly, as if he was puzzled, is it in the Centaur tribe, or? I understand. Soon, Dumbledore seemed to have thought of something and shook his head helplessly. In that case, let's just leave it at that for now. If Aris doesn't want the dragon to be discovered, there should be a way. But I still have to remind you, Hagrid, that dragon is not like Iris, it might bring trouble to Hogwarts. So, if things change, I might have to give it away. I understand, Professor. Hagrid nodded sadly. Obviously, he really treated the little fire dragon as his own child. Okay, go back first, I need to think about it. Yes, Professor. Hagrid nodded and left the principal's office. After the giant left, Dumbledore turned and walked towards the balcony, looking in the direction of the Forbidden Forest. Aris, this little guy is really restless. I hope the dragon won't cause any trouble in the Forbidden Forest. However, with Iris here, nothing should happen. But I'm afraid there will be some trouble with the Centaur tribe. After saying that, a smile suddenly appeared on Dumbledore's lips, and then he shook his head in amusement. Then, his expression became solemn again. The one we need to worry about most now is that guy. I just hope everything goes as I wish. Weekends are the happiest time for little wizards. Students in their second year and above can go to Hogsmeade Village, buy some candy at the candy store, or have a glass of butterbeer at the Three Broomsticks. Of course, only senior students can buy butterbeer. As for the young wizards in the lower grades, there are also some delicious drinks that are very popular. Although first-year students cannot go out, they will have a rare 2 days to rest. These were happy and pleasant days for most of the young wizards. But Aris doesn't think so. That day, he had just walked out of the Ravenclaw lounge when he was spotted by the Weasley twins. "Aris, when are we going to act?" Fred hinted frantically at the boy. He had obviously been looking forward to the three people's adventure and was also extremely excited about the Marauders map. "I think today will be an exciting and thrilling day." George was also very excited. "You too, you're here so early in the morning, don't you want to sleep in?" Aris yawned. He stayed in the lab until late last night. If he wasn't hungry, he would probably still be catching up on sleep. However, since the Weasley twins were already here, he knew he couldn't get rid of them. "If I don't take them to the secret passage today, I guess I won't be able to fool them." 0139041330 Fila 230331031. Half an hour later, after finishing their breakfast, they hurried out of the castle. "Although there is a secret passage at the Whomping Willow, do we have to be the first to explore it?" Fred and George followed Aris, looking a little guilty. "No one dares to mess with that willow tree. It is said that anyone who gets close to it will be hung up and whipped." "Why, are you scared?" Aris glanced at the twins with a half-smile. "What a joke." Fred couldn't hold it in any longer. "For the great cause of magical pranks, we must move forward bravely even if we are afraid. It's just the Whomping Willow. We can definitely do it. That being said, where exactly is the secret passage?" George looked at Aris and asked. "Well, according to the map, the entrance to the secret passage is somewhere in the Whomping Willow stump. It's a very small hole. However, the map doesn't indicate where the secret passage leads to." Of course Aris knew that the secret passage led to the Shrieking Shack in Hogsmeade. But at this time, it is natural to whet Gemini's appetite. It's exciting just by listening to it. "Do you think this secret passage will lead to some unknown cave? Maybe there are some magical props hidden in it, very powerful ones." Fred has already started to fantasize. "I think it's more likely that there is a dragon in the cave." George dared to think. Hearing what the two said, Aris almost laughed out loud, but he still said seriously, "I think there might be a haunted house at the end of the tunnel." Haunted house? George and Fred looked at each other and became even more excited. "This is so exciting, it's exactly the adventurous life we've always dreamed of. You, better think of how to get through that willow tree and reach the secret passage." Aris shook his head speechlessly. At this time, they had already arrived at the workplace. Phew! In front of us, a huge willow tree was standing there quietly, swaying gently in the breeze. Yes, the entire trunk of the big willow tree was shaking, and it looked like a legendary tree demon. Cluck! George and Fred swallowed their saliva, stopped walking nervously, and said in a trembling voice, "How about we try another secret passage today?" "Are you sure?" Aris opened the Marauders map, on which the location of the Whomping Willow was marked, and a line of small words appeared, "Just touch the raised part of the stump and the Whomping Willow will stop moving." The Weasley twins perked up immediately after seeing the small words. "Of course I'm kidding. We must find this secret passage today. Even if Merlin comes, he can't stop us." Chapter 139. Castle, Gryffindor Common Room. Harry, Ronald and the other two had no intention of taking a good rest. They were still discussing the Philosopher's Stone. Of course, the topic they discussed the most was Voldemort. "Harry, do you think, if he really comes back, will he want to kill you?" Ronald looked at Harry with a worried look on his face. "Of course he wants to, but if he could do it, he wouldn't have waited until now." Harry gritted his teeth, with a rare look of calmness on his face. "At least Harry is safe here, have you forgotten?" Hermione looked at the two and analyzed, "Who is the you-know-who most afraid of? It's Professor Dumbledore, and this is Hogwarts. As long as Professor Dumbledore is still here, the you-know-who will never dare to do anything to Harry." "That's right, that's why Aris said we don't need to worry too much." Harry also nodded. "But, what if Dumbledore leaves the castle?" Ronald asked uncertainly. "Then we should really be worried." Hermione took a deep breath. "Well, the final exams are coming up soon. I think you should think carefully about whether you can pass each course. Hermione shrugged and said, so, I'm going to the library now, what about you? Wait. Harry suddenly covered his forehead again. My scar hurts again, just like it's on fire. How could this happen? Ronald quickly came to Harry and carefully observed Harry's forehead. I think this might be some kind of warning, just like the last time in the Forbidden Forest, a warning of some kind of danger. Harry forced himself to calm down, trying to follow Aris' method, keeping his mind focused and trying not to think about anything. However, at this moment, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. No, Hagrid wanted a dragon so badly, and he got one from a stranger. But who would walk around with 10 dragon eggs? This is wrong from the beginning. Hagrid said that the man seemed to be very interested in magical creatures, and the two of them had a very pleasant chat. Ronald also recalled the conversation with Hagrid at that time, frowning slightly. So, if the stranger approached Hagrid intentionally, and they talked about magical animals, then would they also talk about the three-headed hellhound? I remember Hagrid said that he knew how to deal with the three-headed hellhound. Harry's thoughts became clearer and clearer, and his mood became more and more anxious. I guarantee that there is something wrong with this matter. Having said that, Harry stood up suddenly and walked towards the lounge exit. What are you going to do? Aris said that we can't act rashly. Hermione chased after him immediately, and Ronald followed closely behind. It's too late. I have a strong feeling now. I must tell Professor Dumbledore about this as soon as possible. The guy hiding in the dark is likely to take action soon. Harry seemed to have some strange premonition, perhaps it was really brought to him by the lightning-shaped scar on his head. He spoke very quickly and without stopping at all, he ran straight towards the principal's office. Wait a minute, Potter, what are you doing in such a hurry? At this time, a voice came from behind them. Professor McGonagall frowned slightly and looked at the trio. They look like they just came out of the Transfiguration classroom. Professor McGonagall, I want to see Professor Dumbledore, right now. Harry said quickly without any hesitation, this matter is very important, we must report to him. Professor Dumbledore. McGonagall looked at the three of them in confusion, then shook his head, I'm sorry, I'm afraid you won't be able to see him. He just received an urgent letter from the Ministry of Magic and left Hogwarts. But this matter is really important. It is related to the Philosopher's Stone. Someone wants to steal it and may do so soon. We must take action, otherwise something terrible will happen. Harry couldn't care less and spoke directly. Aris said that if you encounter any problems, notify the professor immediately. They are doing this now, and hope that Professor McGonagall will pay attention. At this time, McGonagall was obviously a little surprised. How did you know that? Who wants to steal it? No, this is impossible, that thing is under strict protection, no one can steal it. You should know that this is not something you should be concerned about. Go back quickly. I don't care how you know this, but don't tell anyone. But Professor. Harry wanted to argue again. But a voice suddenly sounded from behind, Professor McGonagall, are you free? Professor Dumbledore told me before he left that he had something to tell you, right now. Harry didn't need to turn his head to know that the voice was sinister and carried a sense of disgust. The one who spoke must be Snape. The three little wizards turned around and saw Snape standing at the classroom door. Okay, let's go back, Zero request flowers. Professor McGonagall stood up and walked towards Snape at the classroom door. At this time, Snape looked at Harry with a warning look, you three, if you have nothing to do, it's best not to wander around. Otherwise, others will think that you are violating school rules, or are planning to violate school rules. Seeing Snape, Harry and the others immediately shut their mouths. At this time, they were still unable to confirm whether Snape was Voldemort's spy, or was simply a person possessed by Voldemort, so they did not trust the man in front of them at all. Come on, let's go back. Harry turned around and left without hesitation. Snape looked at the three young wizards who were leaving and stroked his chin thoughtfully. Then, he looked at Professor McGonagall and said, Professor Dumbledore asked me to tell you that if anyone asks you about the Philosopher's Stone, you must keep it a secret. Also, when he is not in the castle, you must pay attention to what is going on over there. Zero, you should understand what he means, right? Professor McGonagall frowned slightly, then nodded gently, I understand, I will go check the situation over there later to make sure there is no problem, just now. Thinking of what Harry and the others had just said, Professor McGonagall's tone paused and his brows furrowed even more. What's wrong? Snape looked at McGonagall hesitantly. It's okay, I hope I'm just overthinking it. McGonagall shook his head and then turned back to the classroom. I still have some things to deal with, please help yourself, Professor Snape. After Harry left with Ronald and Hermione, he did not go towards the Gryffindor dormitory. Where are we going? Ronald asked with some confusion. I have a bad feeling. We must go to the corridor on the 4th floor to check out the situation. Harry said as he walked quickly, perhaps, Hermione, you can go look for Aris. If anything goes wrong, he should have the experience to deal with it. When the time comes, we'll meet in the corridor. Hermione understood what Harry meant immediately and nodded gently, I will try my best to find him. You know, he is usually mysterious and his whereabouts are uncertain. I am not sure I can find him. The three of them separated temporarily. Hermione walked quickly towards the Ravenclaw common room. Harry and Ronald went directly to the corridor on the 4th floor. Chapter 140. Wow, it's so thrilling and exciting. In the secret passage below the Whomping Willow, Fred was breathing rapidly, but his face was full of excitement. I knew that would work. Even the Whomping Willow wouldn't be able to react. We are simply geniuses. George also waved his hands and gestured exaggeratedly. But, it seemed like it was my suggestion to use the levitation spell to throw you over and pin you down on the tree stump, right? Aris looked at the twins helplessly, feeling both amused and helpless. These two guys, who just looked scared to death, now entered the secret passage as if nothing had happened. They are really shameless. It seems that my previous impression of them was somewhat accurate. These two guys are more than just socially anxious and mischievous. His face is much thicker than that of ordinary people. Aris, you're the best. After hearing Aris's words, the twins, who were in sync with each other, gave the boy a thumbs up. Then, they began to observe their surroundings as if nothing had happened. I guarantee that this is an underground cave. I can guarantee that this cave leads to the outside of Hogwarts. The two of them were like performing a crosstalk, looking around and chatting back and forth. Although, Aris felt that most of what they talked about was nonsense. The three of them walked carefully into the damp underground secret passage. Oh, no, only the Weasley twins were very careful, as if they were exploring some extremely dangerous restricted area, holding their wands in their hands and observing their surroundings carefully. Although the two were chatting and joking the whole time, one could still feel that they were tense all over. Aris followed behind, walking slowly, looking at the Marauder's map in his hand. As the three of them went deeper into the secret passage, the route on the map was almost reaching its end. Strictly speaking, it is not the end point. It is just a line extending here and there is nothing beyond it. It was as if the secret passage behind was deliberately hidden where it would lead to. Aris couldn't help but turn the map to the front again, subconsciously looking for Quirrell. Sadly, Quirrell's name is not on the castle grounds either. He's not in the castle? Aris frowned slightly. At this sensitive moment, this guy actually sneaked out of the castle, or, he deliberately hid his figure, whatever the possibility, it's not right. Where are the little ones? Aris started looking for Harry and the others' names again. This is the power of the Marauder's map. As long as someone is within the range of Hogwarts, he can quickly find him on the map. Unless that person deliberately cast a spell to hide his body, or is in a place that cannot be detected by the Marauder's map. Soon, Aris found the name of Harry Potter. And Ronald and Hermione, they are together now, and their location, seems to be heading to the corridor on the 4th floor? What do they want to do? Seeing this, Aris frowned even deeper. Quirrell disappeared from the map, and the three little nets went to the 4th floor corridor again. This plot, seems, a bit like the final battle in the original novel. If Quirrell has entered the chamber where the magician is kept, his name may not appear on the map. That place must have been cast with some kind of magic that can hide one's whereabouts. But, according to the time calculation, it shouldn't be that soon. Aris remembered very clearly that Quirrell entered the basement to steal the magician's plot after the young wizards finished their exams, and now there are still 2 weeks before the exams. Could it be that Voldemort felt threatened by what happened in the Forbidden Forest last time, so he took action in advance? Thinking of this, Aris stopped. You two, I'm afraid today's adventure has to end here. His voice made the Weasley twins in front of him stop and turn around in confusion. What's wrong, Aris? We should be almost at the exit. Are you sure you don't want to keep going? Fred looked ahead at the corridor unwillingly. Yes, we are almost at the finish line, how can we give up at this time? George obviously didn't want to retreat now. However, Aris' tone was firm. This secret passage should only have one exit, and whether you look at the map or the place you just walked through, there is no fork in the road. You just need to keep going forward and you will see the exit. I have something else to do in the castle. I must leave immediately. After saying that, Aris turned around and left resolutely without paying any attention to the regretful looks on their faces. Although according to the development of the plot, Harry Potter will eventually defeat Voldemort's remaining soul and get the Philosopher's Stone with the blessing of the protagonist's halo, Aris does not want any accidents to happen during this period. Besides, Hermione will definitely enter the Chamber of Secrets soon, he was a little worried. Moreover, Ari just happened to know that Dumbledore was not in school at the moment. In fact, Dumbledore always specifically informed Aris every time he left. He also knew the old wizard's intention, which was obviously to ask him to behave himself during this period of time and not cause any trouble. Without Dumbledore in the castle, this matter would be even more uncertain. Aris! The Weasley twins called out from behind. Seeing that the boy had no intention of looking back, she could only look at him and sigh helplessly. What now? Fred looked at George. What else can we do? Keep moving forward. George said without any hesitation. A true warrior dares to face the blood. Just because we have encountered such a small problem, are we going to back down? That's exactly what I was saying. Fred winked. Afterwards, the two of them seemed to have a tacit understanding and turned around to continue walking deeper into the secret passage. The corridor on the 4th floor of the castle. Harry and Ronald were currently anxiously waiting for Hermione. Why hasn't he come yet? I wonder if Hermione has found Aris. Harry, if Aris isn't here, are we still going in? Ronald looked at the door not far away that was locked with the three-headed dog of hell and couldn't help swallowing. Of course. Harry didn't even think twice. Then, he frowned again, and said in a slightly softer tone, at least, we have to go and see if there are 3.5 abnormalities in the three-headed big dog, otherwise can you rest assured. Damn it, I knew it. Ronald muttered, then shook his head resignedly. At this time, a figure hurried over. Hermione. Harry's eyes suddenly lit up, and he quickly went up to her and asked, how's it going? Did you find Aris? No. Hermione, who had obviously run all the way here, panted and said, I've already searched everywhere, the Ravenclaw common room, the lab, the auditorium. We've searched all the places where Aris could be. He may not be in the castle. Not in the castle. Harry and Ronald were dumbfounded. But, where will he go? Most importantly, what do we do now? The three of them looked towards the door not far away and started to struggle. Chapter 141. How about we take a closer look? Harry looked at Ronald and Hermione and suggested, before adding, just a look. If there is nothing unusual, we will leave immediately. But what if someone really went in? Ronald's face fell. Then we have no choice. Harry took a deep breath, then slowly walked towards the door at the end of the corridor. I hope everything is all right. Hermione took a deep breath and followed Harry. Hermione couldn't help but feel uneasy at the thought of facing the three-headed monster again. At this time, she couldn't help but think of Aris. If that guy was here, maybe he wouldn't be so nervous? After all, she seemed to have never seen Aris nervous before. The little witch shook her head, threw the thoughts out of her mind, and forced herself to focus on the front. Did you hear that? At this moment, Harry suddenly stopped, pricked up his ears and listened carefully for a while, then suddenly quickened his pace again. I think I hear music behind that door ahead. As he spoke, his steps became faster and faster, and in the process he pulled out his wand and pointed it directly at the door in front of him. Allaho, open! The wooden door that held the three giant dogs quietly opened. Then, the three little wizards rushed in directly. I've been wondering what the purpose of this door is. Ronald looked at the scene in the room and said something that had nothing to do with the current situation. Maybe, it's just because there should be a door there. Hermione also said blankly. It's music. Now, only Harry was calm. He looked at the three giant dogs that were already asleep in the room, and his eyes immediately turned to the organ beside him. The organ was playing music by itself. Someone obviously put it here. This means that someone has entered the secret room guarded by the three-headed giant dog. The worst has happened. Hermione frowned. Should we go down now? Ronald couldn't help but look at Harry again. Harry didn't say anything, but walked forward quickly and began to move the paws of the three giant dogs. The paws of the big dogs were blocking a movable wooden board at this time, and under the board was obviously the secret room where the Philosopher's Stone was stored. At this moment, Harry's eyes were extremely serious and determined. Dumbledore and Aris are not in the castle. It is obvious that someone has gone down to the Chamber of Secrets. That person must be the one who wants to steal the Philosopher's Stone. We must stop him. Otherwise, once Voldemort is resurrected through the Philosopher's Stone, the entire wizarding world will be threatened. The tragedy that happened before may happen again. But we are just 3 freshmen. Ronald was about to cry. We don't have a choice, do we? Harry struggled to move the three-headed dog's paw a little bit, just enough to open the wooden door below. Then, he opened the wooden door and turned to look at Ronald and Hermione seriously. In fact, there is no need for you to go down with me. Voldemort's life or death has nothing to do with you, but it does with me. He killed my parents, and I must make him pay the price. Now, I'm afraid this is my last chance. He is very weak now, even to the point that he needs unicorn blood to stay alive. In other words, if we go down now, there might be a small chance to defeat him. Once he obtains the Philosopher's Stone and regains his strength. At that time, perhaps only Dumbledore can subdue him. Do you understand what I mean? Harry, stop talking. Ronald suddenly took a deep breath, his expression became firm. I'll go down with you. You always need a helping hand, don't you? Then, they both turned to look at Hermione. If I don't go, are you sure you can get to the mysterious man? Although Hermione still frowned, she also made her attitude clear, and then asked in a somewhat strange tone, do you feel that something seems to be wrong? Hey! Harry and Ronald were stunned for a moment. It seems a little too quiet. Hermione subconsciously turned her head and looked at the organ behind her. Then, the expression on his face began to change rapidly. The music stopped. At this moment, Ronald suddenly yelled, what the hell is this? It's so disgusting. He reached out and touched his shoulder, and felt a large mass of unknown liquid, which was sticky and had a foul odor. Roar! At this moment, a terrifying roar came from above. Ah! The 3 little wizards couldn't help but scream. What did they see? The 3-headed hellhound had awakened at some point and stood up, looking down at the 3 people below. The unknown liquid on Ronald's body was the saliva of the big dog. At this time, the 3-headed dog had obviously noticed the intruder under its feet. On the huge head, a pair of eyes revealed an angry look, and its ferocious bloody mouth was opened. Jump! Harry shouted, and then jumped off the trapped door without any hesitation. Hermione also reacted quickly and jumped down next, followed by Ronald. Ronald, who finally jumped off the wooden door, could even feel a burning breath following him, and the terrifying roar almost made his eardrums burst. Fortunately, the wooden door, which was very narrow for the 3-headed hellhound, blocked the huge head outside, so Ronald was spared and his butt was not bitten off. Fortunately, we acted quickly enough, otherwise we would have been taken as dinner by that big dog. Luckily there is a soft plant mat here, so we didn't get hurt. Ronald and Harry looked around with lingering fear. Under the wooden door was a dark space, like a cave built under the castle. Obviously, they had just passed the wooden door and fell somewhere under the castle. At this moment, they only felt that the plants under their buttocks were wet and a little slippery, but they were indeed very soft, like the limbs of some mollusk. I have a bad feeling. At this time, Ronald's voice sounded again, and he touched the slippery, soft, and flat unknown plant under his butt. This is a devil's snare. Hermione's voice sounded at the right time, this is not a mat, but a very dangerous large plant. If someone falls into the devil's snare and doesn't know how to escape, they will be strangled to death. Well, damn it. Ronald was about to cry again. I just don't know how to escape from this damn plant. Are we going to die? As Ronald's words came out, the devil's snare under their buttocks began to wriggle, and quickly bound the hands and feet of the 3 people. Then, the plant wrapped around their entire bodies little by little. Unfortunately, at this time, they had no leverage and could do nothing. Chapter 142. Don't be nervous, relax. At this time, Hermione's voice sounded again. The devil's snare only preys on creatures that are nervous, fearful, and active. Just relax and stay quiet. As she spoke, Hermione completely relaxed, and then she fell off the devil's snare little by little. Hermione! Harry and Ronald screamed in horror at the same time. They thought Hermione had been completely devoured by the devil's snare. Just do as I say and relax. At this time, Hermione's voice came from below again, and it was obvious from the voice that she was out of danger. Did you hear that, Ronald? Relax and trust Hermione. Harry was still calm at this time. He quickly calmed himself down, then slowly relaxed, and then he fell down little by little. Harry, are you okay? Ronald was still terrified and struggling violently. Damn it, how can I relax? He's strangling my neck and butt. I feel like I'm going to break. Help! Ronald's terrified screams echoed underground. Below, Hermione and Harry, who were out of danger, looked up. The devil's net is about 2 meters above the ground. As long as you relax your body, you can naturally get down from the devil's net. But Ronald obviously can't do it. He just can't relax, can he? Hermione looked at the struggling figure above anxiously and speechlessly. Hermione, you must have a way, right? Save Ronald, otherwise he might really die. Harry listened to Ronald's screams with an anxious look on his face. Let me think. Hermione was also a little nervous at this time. Ronald's screams were so miserable, as if he was really about to die. The devil's snare prefers dark and humid environments. Strangely enough, it retreats when exposed to sunlight. In a hurry, Hermione recited everything she had read in the book about devil's snare too. By the way, it's afraid of the light. Hermione screamed, then drew her wand. Bright light flashing. This is an advanced version of the luminescent spell, which can summon intense bright light. The next moment, a strong light appeared in the dark and humid underground cave. This ray of light directly penetrated the entire devil's snare. Afterwards, those soft, tentacle-like vines quickly dispersed as if they had encountered a raging fire. Of course, Ronald, who was entangled in the devil's net, naturally fell off. Fortunately I am calm. Ronald, who had fallen flat on his face, stood up quickly, brushed the dust off his butt, and spoke as if nothing had happened. It's thanks to Hermione who reads so many books. She's right. Without them, we might not even be able to reach the you-know-who and would have died here. Harry looked at Ronald speechlessly. I just happened to see the content of the devil's snare. If it was Aris, he might not have handled it so badly. Hermione looked at her dirty robes and sighed softly. Yet, where did Aris go? Ronald quickly changed the subject to hide his embarrassment. He didn't sneak off to Hogsmeade, did he? Harry looked at him again, then turned and looked forward. I think now is not the time to discuss this issue. Did you hear anything? It seems, it's the sound of some winged creature. Ronald and Hermione's expressions gradually became serious. At this time, Aris has returned to Hogwarts. After coming out of the Whomping Willow, he ran quickly towards the castle, even granting himself wind walk, making him extremely fast. What was that thing that just ran over? Gryffindor student Seamus, who was playing with magic frisbee at the castle gate, suddenly felt a gust of wind, and then saw a black shadow moving away at a very fast speed. It seems like a person. Neville was also stunned for a moment, looking at Aris who had disappeared into the castle, and shook his head. Maybe we saw it wrong. Well, how can anyone run that fast? The two shook their heads and started playing frisbee again. Aris quickly came to the corridor on the 4th floor of the castle, took a look at the secret room where the three-headed dog was imprisoned, and frowned slightly. It seems that they really went in. The lock of the door was still open at this time, so Aris pushed the door open and walked in, then saw the huge three-headed dog. Roar! Without the hypnotic music, the three-headed hellhound stood up and looked towards Aris, with anger in its eyes, as if it was unhappy for not having enjoyed afternoon tea before, staring at the boy intently. Be good, and you won't get beaten if you behave yourself. Aris patiently negotiated with the big dog. As long as you let me go, I will not do anything, okay? Roar! The three-headed dog of hell roared again, obviously not very happy with it. It seems that the negotiations have failed. Aris pulled out his magic wand helplessly, and then used a set of 5 lightning whips. Fireball Jutsu. Wind Whirl. Lightning Storm. Shrink quickly. Everyone is petrified. After this set of spells, the three-headed dog was first tortured by the flames and strong winds and was on the verge of collapse. In the process, it was also hit by several lightning bolts. In the end, he was made smaller by Aris. Then, it was petrified into a mini version of the three-headed dog. Boom! The petrified mini three-headed dog fell on the movable wooden door and was kicked aside by Aris. "I'm sorry, I'm really in a hurry. If you had listened to me just now, this wouldn't have happened." Then he opened the wooden door and jumped down. Inside the room, although the three-headed dog had been petrified, tears of regret still flowed from its eyes. If it could still make a sound at this moment, I'm afraid it would have already cried. It couldn't understand why Xiao Er was so powerful now. After all, the three-headed hellhound is a well-known vicious beast. Is it so shameless? Everyone doesn't take it seriously. This is too much. Soon, Aris arrived above the devil's net. He cast a levitation spell on himself and looked down at the devil's snare. There are traces of the light spell, looks like Hermione's work. Seeing that the devil's snare had been destroyed, he cancelled the levitation spell and jumped down directly. The broom level should be ahead. Aris shook her head. The first level, the devil's snare, happens to be within Hermione's knowledge range, and the second level, riding a broom to grab keys, is obviously Harry's specialty. The most outrageous thing is the third level, which is actually a real wizard chessboard. It is clearly prepared for Ronald. Dumbledore, this old man, is really good. Are you worried they won't find Quirrell? Looking at the door in front of me, I listened to the sound of keys vibrating wings from inside. Aris reached out helplessly and opened the door. I don't know which level they have reached. Chapter 143. This is a very spacious room, especially with the extra headroom. Densely packed keys with wings were flying over the room. In the center of the room, there was a broom, and on the other side there was a door, which was locked. Obviously, if you want to get out of this room, you must find the key that can open the door to the other room from among these densely packed keys in order to pass the level successfully. It's a good idea. They even prepared a broom. They are very considerate of the little wizard. Aris shook his head slightly, then glanced at the door at the exit. An ordinary unlocking spell definitely won't work. Ronald seems to have tried it in the original book. This door might be cursed. Only by finding the right key can the door be opened. But there's no rule that says you have to use a broomstick to find your keys, right? Aris looked carefully and soon found an old, rusty key that looked severely damaged, with half of its wings broken. That should be it. Aris waved her wand gently. Keys are flying. With a simple flying spell, the key found by Aris quickly flew towards him. However, at the same time, the attack properties of the other keys were also activated. All of them flew up from the air, and then all flew towards Aris like bullets. Fire shield protection. Aris shouted softly, and a flash of fire suddenly appeared in front of him. Afterwards, the fire formed a shield that blocked all the flying keys. The wings of the keys that wanted to break through the fire shield were burned off and they fell to the ground one after another. He grabbed the old-fashioned key that was summoned by Aris's flying spell and inserted it accurately into the door. Accompanied by the click sound of the door opening, Aris walked out easily. The security measures arranged by the deans of the 4 colleges are only this strong. Aris sighed slowly. I really don't know how to complain about this. After passing the second level, Aris came to a dark space. Oh, no, there is light shining down from above not far ahead, so it's not completely dark. It was a chessboard, and most of the chess pieces on it had been destroyed. At this moment, there were 2 small figures on the chessboard. Aris! Hermione called out in surprise when she saw the boy walking out of the darkness. You! I thought, you finally came. The little witch was originally thinking about how to get the injured Ronald out of here. After seeing Aris, the shock and fear she had experienced along the way seemed to burst out completely, and huge tears burst out from her eyes. Hermione, how are you guys doing? Aris frowned slightly. He saw that Hermione had quite a few scratches on her body, especially on her forehead and arms. There was even blood oozing out. It was obvious that the clearance was not as easy as it looked in the original movie. Healed like new. Aris cast a healing spell at Hermione. Afterwards, the wounds and bloodstains on her body miraculously healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's okay, I'm here. Aris touched the little witch's head and comforted her gently. Harry discovered that someone had entered here. We wanted to discuss it with you first, but we couldn't find you. Dumbledore left the school again, and Professor McGonagall didn't believe that anyone would break in here. We have no choice but to come in by ourselves. Hermione wiped her tears and narrated the incident to Aris in a wronged manner. And Ronald, he sacrificed himself so that Harry could continue to move forward smoothly. He was knocked down by the wizard chess. I tried the recovery spell, but it had no effect at all. Is he? Am I really useless? Woo. The little witch became sadder and sadder as she spoke. She looked at Ronald, who was lying on the ground, not knowing whether he was dead or alive. She felt that everything was so terrible. She didn't know how to express the fear and anxiety in her heart. I could only look at Aris with tears streaming down my face. It's okay, I promise everything will be reset. Ronald will not die, and Harry will come back safely, believe me. Aris checked Ronald's injuries. Apart from a scratch on his forehead, there were no other obvious wounds elsewhere. It seemed that he was unconscious. If he guessed correctly, the professor who set up the wizard chessboard obviously did not intend to kill anyone, so Ronald was able to survive now. I have sent a message to Professor McGonagall. She should be here soon, but now I need to go inside and take a look. I'm afraid it will be difficult for Harry to deal with Professor Quirrell alone. So, you and Ronald just wait here, okay? Aris grabbed the little witch's shoulders and asked seriously with encouragement in his eyes. Yes, I can, go ahead. Hearing this, Hermione quickly wiped her tears and nodded solemnly. Well, I'll be back soon. Aris casually threw a recovery spell at Ronald, then stood up and continued walking inside. Next, Aris came to another room. When he entered the room, flames rose simultaneously from the two exits and the entrance. There are some potion bottles in this room. The content of this level in the original book should be that you need to choose the correct potion and drink it, and then you can pass through the flames and enter the place where the Philosopher's Stone is finally stored. Or, return the same way. At this time, the only potion that leads to the next level has been drunk by Harry, and the potion that leads back to the original level should have been drunk by Hermione. Hermione in the original book is the person Harry and in front of Aris, all that was left were poisonous potions. However, he had no intention of drinking these potions. Aris walked to the door where the Philosopher's Stone was finally stored, and carefully felt the properties of the flames. Very clever magic. There is nothing special about this flame. It is just a simple identity identification spell, and the color looks intimidating. The key to this level is not the flame, but the potion. The potion of the corresponding color can temporarily give people the ability to avoid being harmed by flames of the same attributes. And Aris, in Aris's opinion, it is not that difficult to pass this road. Fire Shield Protection. Aris cast another Fire Shield spell, and the fiery red flames immediately enveloped his body again. Then, he cast a Water Shield on himself. Then he slowly stepped forward and walked into the flaming gate. Just as he expected, the magic on the flame gate froze for a moment after encountering the Fire Shield, and then the two forces cancelled each other out, causing no harm to Aris at all. As for the Water Shield, he added it simply because he felt a little hot. As Aris stepped into the flame gate, the scene in front of him suddenly brightened. He immediately cast an illusion spell on himself, and then added a few spells to conceal his presence. Then, walk forward. At this moment, he had seen that Harry, who was at the innermost, seemed to be confronting Quirrell. Chapter 144. Castle, Transfiguration Classroom. Professor McGonagall originally wanted to patrol the corridor on the 4th floor after correcting the homework in her hand, but at this moment, a slight sound of a bird flapping its wings came from above her head. Bird message. Professor McGonagall was stunned for a moment. There were not many people in the school who knew how to pass messages in this way, not to mention the young wizards. Most of them probably didn't know this magic because it was not taught in school. As for the professors, they usually use owls when they want to deliver a message. Because bird messaging was so new to the wizards, it was hard to guarantee that the birds wouldn't be shot down by mischievous wizards using magic. This had happened before. Who could it be? McGonagall grumbled, then gently extended his hand. The letter from the bird fell into her hands. Dear Professor McGonagall, the Philosopher's Stone has been stolen. Harry, Ronald, and Hermione have gone into the basement to stop the thieves. I am about to go down as well. I hope you can come to support me as soon as you receive the letter. I think it would be best to call Madame Pomfrey to prevent anyone from getting hurt. Written by Aris Shafik. After seeing the content of the letter, McGonagall stood up suddenly. Aris, Harry Potter, thief. At this moment, she didn't care about the homework on the table that she hadn't finished correcting, and hurried towards the 4th floor of the castle. On the way, she thought of the content of the letter and attracted another owl. Then, he sent a letter to Mrs. Pangley and the deans of several other major colleges. These little guys, how dare they break in without notifying the professor? Professor McGonagall's face was full of tension and anxiety, with a hint of anger. She couldn't imagine who would dare to steal in Hogwarts. Especially something that is closely guarded by professors. What made her most angry and guilty was that Harry Potter had clearly approached her before and even warned her directly, but she didn't take it seriously at all and thought it was just a child playing around. At this time, she naturally felt that Aris was joking with her. He knew the child's character and was not the kind of person who would joke around easily. Moreover, the matter was of great importance, and even if it turned out to be a misunderstanding in the end, she had to verify the facts. The door was opened. As soon as he arrived at the 4th floor, McGonagall saw from afar that the door at the end had been opened. At this moment, Dunep suddenly jumped out from somewhere. "Professor McGonagall, is it true? Someone broke into the basement." "I think, 9 out of 10 times." McGonagall did not give a clear answer, but her steps towards the basement entrance at the end unconsciously quickened. At this moment, she suddenly had a bad premonition in her heart. Hopefully, no one gets hurt, or something worse happens. That person clearly planned to act when Professor Dumbledore was not in the castle. Snape's voice was a little low, with an inexplicable light flashing in his eyes and a cold tone. "Whoever he is, he will pay the price." McGonagall drew out her wand and waved her hand, and the half-open basement door opened completely. It was obvious that there was a hint of seriousness and solemnity in her tone. "Where's the big dog?" After entering the basement entrance guarded by the 3-headed dog, McGonagall and Snape were both dumbfounded. If the 3-headed dog had gotten out, the whole castle would have been in chaos. It wouldn't be as quiet as it is now. Snape took a few quick steps forward and came to the movable wooden door. He carefully observed the wooden door, and then began to look around for clues. "What is that?" Professor McGonagall's voice suddenly sounded again. Then, she walked quickly to the corner of the room, and in a small corner shrouded in shadows, she found the 3-headed dog of hell that had been petrified and shrunk to look like a doll. "Is this the big dog?" McGonagall was completely stunned, staring at the petrified mini hellhound in amazement. A very powerful petrification spell, and a transfiguration spell. Snape's eyes were also somewhat shocked, and he muttered to himself subconsciously. "This big dog seems to have scars on its body. It must have been severely abused before it was petrified. It seems that the person who defeated it was extremely cruel and merciless. It seems that the guy who broke into the basement is very powerful." McGonagall's face was full of seriousness. "Oh no, go and save Harry and Aris, they are in danger." As she spoke, she stood up and walked quickly towards the movable wooden door. "Are you sure that the dog became like this because of an intruder?" Snape frowned. He could probably guess who broke into the basement, but in his impression, Quirrell shouldn't be that strong, right? That piece of trash is only good at doing sneaky things. Fighting a 3-headed hellhound head-on and beating it up like this? No matter how you look at it, this doesn't seem like the style of that cowardly guy. But besides him, who else is there? 0139041330 Philo 23034137 At this moment, a figure suddenly flashed through Snape's mind. Could it be him? No, impossible. Even if Aris had passed the 5th grade test, there was no way he could have single-handedly dealt with a 3-headed hellhound, and not resulted in such a one-sided crushing situation. Snape slammed the thought out of his mind. The lowest basement. At this moment, Harry Potter was standing in front of the mirror of Aris. He looked at himself in the mirror and stuffed a scarlet ruby-like stone into his trouser pocket. The worst thing was that he subconsciously pinched his pocket and found that there was actually an extra thing inside. "Tell me, Potter, what did you see?" Next to him, Quirrell's low and aggressive voice rang out and echoed throughout the basement. Harry was extremely nervous at the moment, so he naturally couldn't tell the truth, otherwise it would be like telling Quirrell directly, "The Philosopher's Stone is in my pocket, come and get it." However, he had to find a suitable reason to fool Quirrell. The gap in strength between the enemy and us was too great. Even though Professor Quirrell usually looked timid and cowardly, he was still a professor after all. Harry could hardly see any hope of winning. At this time, he could only delay as much as possible, hoping to hold on until other professors discovered something unusual. Or perhaps, a figure appeared involuntarily in his mind. If Aris were here, he would definitely know how to deal with this situation. What do you see? Tell me now. Seeing Harry Potter's hesitation, Quirrell suddenly shouted and seemed about to take action. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind. What he saw is none of your business. What? Harry Potter and Quirrell were both stunned, then turned their heads to look where the sound came from. At this time, a boy walked down the stairs slowly, step by step. During this process, he casually placed a circle of fire around him. I say, everyone here today. Don't even think about escaping. Chapter 145. Aris. Aris. Two voices sounded at the same time. Harry's tone was full of surprise, while Quirrell's face was full of questions, as if he was wondering why Aris was also here. It's obviously impossible for anyone to enter the potion level, right? Could it be that Snape and the others are here too? Thinking of this, Quirrell looked towards the entrance first, then breathed a sigh of relief. No one except Aris. You idiot, you actually dare to come here and die. Quirrell suddenly laughed, his eyes a little fierce, completely different from his previous timid look. Maybe he was pretending, or maybe, this was his true self. When facing those who are weaker than you should strike hard. When facing someone like Voldemort, even if it is just a remnant soul, it dares only to be a submissive dog. Seeking death? Are you worthy? Aris sneered, then raised his wand and flicked it lightly, silently casting the spell 930 to directly pick up Quirrell's headscarf and drop it to the ground. I don't want to waste time talking to you, let your master come out and speak. You, how did you know? Quirrell finally showed a trace of panic at this time. Voldemort was inside him, and that was his biggest secret. He didn't know why Aris knew this secret. This feeling of being out of control made him feel a little threatened, and at the same time he was deeply afraid of Aris. At this moment, he suddenly felt that this little wizard in front of him seemed not easy to mess with. The oppressive feeling that the boy brought was exactly the same as that of his master. Well, little guy, I underestimated you. At this time, a hoarse and low voice suddenly sounded in the basement. Harry looked around in panic, trying to find the source of the voice. At this time, Quirrell also turned around very tactfully. Then, a terrifying face suddenly appeared at the back of Quirrell's head. The face had scars on it, and it looked like it had normal facial features, but nothing else was normal. What the hell is this? Harry screamed subconsciously and covered his forehead with his hands. At this moment, he felt as if his lightning-shaped scar was on fire, burning him so much that his entire body seemed to be melting. The pain was accompanied by an inexplicable panic. Voldemort? This is the first time we meet. Please take care of me. Aris looked at the ghost face that appeared on the back of Quirrell's head with a smile, his expression indifferent. He is. Harry finally understood, and looking at that horrible face, his expression became extremely ugly. At this moment, his heart was filled with anger and hatred. He wished he could cast a killing curse to smash that extremely ugly face to pieces. However, he knew clearly that he did not have that ability. The enemy who killed my parents is right in front of me, but I can't do anything. This feeling made Harry Potter so uncomfortable that he just wanted to vent. Aris Shafik. Voldemort's voice sounded again, his hoarseness revealing a hint of suppressed anger. I should have known that you would do something bad. Unfortunately, you are too arrogant. As soon as he finished speaking, Quirrell suddenly stretched out his hand, and an invisible magical force surged out and grabbed Aris' neck. Arrogant. Aris chuckled, and with a light wave of the magic wand in his hand, he wiped out the magic power. At the same time, a bolt of lightning suddenly appeared out of nowhere and struck Quirrell. Now, do you still think I am arrogant? How is this possible? Quirrell let out a scream, then subconsciously took a few steps back, looking at his arm in disbelief. Black smoke was coming out of it, and the place where it was struck by lightning was charred. If he hadn't reacted quickly and avoided most of the force of the lightning, he would probably have turned into a piece of charcoal by now, and there is no way he would still be alive. Master, his magic power is very strong, even stronger than mine. Now, what should we do now? At this time, Quirrell was completely panicked. After seeing Aris's strength, he felt an unprecedented sense of crisis in his heart. You useless thing, what are you afraid of? Voldemort's voice sounded again, but this time, it was a little more exasperated. At the side, Harry Potter showed a relieved smile on his face. Looking at the embarrassed Quirrell and Voldemort, he cast an admiring look at Aris. As expected. It has to be Aris again, no one can be his opponent. Harry knew that Aris was very strong, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. Quirrell seemed completely powerless in front of him. And Voldemort. Harry could clearly hear that Voldemort seemed to be extremely afraid of Aris. Quick, catch Harry Potter. At this moment, Voldemort's voice suddenly sounded again. Before Harry could react, he felt a dark shadow rush in front of him. Then, the whole person was grabbed by the neck and lifted up. Let me go. He struggled hard, kicked his feet, and tried every means to resist. At the same time, he looked at Aris. Save me, Aris. At this time, Aris shook his head and said with some regret, what a pity, I wanted to fight with you, but now I can't. Then, he reminded Harry, use your hands, spare him. Hey! Harry was stunned for a moment, but he still subconsciously followed Aris's instructions, stretched out his hand, and used his bloody palm and fingers to fiercely scratch the arm that Quirrell was holding. Ugh! Just like in the original novel, the protective magic flowing in Harry Potter's blood instantly made Quirrell, or rather Voldemort who possessed Quirrell, feel what infinite love means. And the pain of self-inflicted suffering. It is a very ancient magic that requires the sacrifice of loved ones. On the night when Harry Potter was attacked by Voldemort, his mother Lily Billions cast the spell at the cost of her own life, just to ensure that Harry would not be harmed by evil magic. In fact, this magic only works on Voldemort. After all, the target of Lily's spell was Voldemort. Therefore, that night, Voldemort's killing curse rebounded and hit him, and a generation of great devil fell. Just because of a newborn baby, Voldemort's depressed life also began from that day. Yet, well done Harry, keep holding him. Aris simply sat on the steps and took out a bag of melon seeds from the system space. I watched the show while eating melon seeds. How could he? Harry Potter looked in amazement at Quirrell, who was seriously injured by his claw. He was stunned for a moment, and then looked at Aris in confusion. What are you looking at me for? Keep tickling him. Aris reminded. At this time, Quirrell and Voldemort, who were wailing in pain, seemed unwilling to give up and rushed towards Harry again. Ah! Harry suddenly yelled, and said fiercely, go to hell. The young warrior stretched out his claws, and with the black tiger's heart-ripping trick in mind, he fiercely grabbed Quirrell's face. And then, it was all over. Quirrell's entire face quickly decayed and turned into dust, which then spread to his entire body. He was inexplicably killed by an 11-year-old wizard who did not use any magic. Aris shook his head in boredom, clapped his hands and stood up from the ground. He knew that the next battle was the most important one. Voldemort's soul is not so easy to die. Chapter 146. Aris stared solemnly at the wisp of black smoke hovering above Quirrell's body. It was the remaining soul of Voldemort. Harry, be careful! He shouted and quickly stood in front of Harry, pointing his wand at the black smoke. Voldemort's spirit let out a shrill roar, and turned into a black whirlwind, rushing straight towards Harry. Soul imprisonment. Aris cast the spell without hesitation, and a silver light flashed, cutting through the darkness, using Voldemort's soul. The Dark Lord howled in pain and his body trembled violently, but he was not completely controlled or disappeared. You are just a little kid, and you dare to block my way. Voldemort's eerie voice echoed in the cellar, bringing with it a chilling chill. You can try, Voldemort. Aris spoke in a firm tone, his eyes were sharp as a knife, and he looked directly at the black dew without fear. Do you think you can stop me? Voldemort sneered, and the black mist attacked Aris again. Weak soul. Aris waved his wand, and a flash of red light struck Voldemort's soul. This time, however, the spell seemed to have no effect on the Dark Lord. Voldemort laughed again. You are too naive, Shafik, I am not an ordinary soul. As he spoke, his soul suddenly expanded, like a huge black net, covering Aris' head. Careful! Harry yelled in horror and tried to push Aris away. Aris, however, remained calm. A golden light quickly gathered in front of him, quickly blocking Voldemort's attack. He then quickly drew a complex magic circle on the ground and muttered something. In an instant, another strengthened golden barrier rose up around him and Harry, blocking Voldemort's attack. Harry stared at the golden light, too shocked to speak. A defensive magic that can temporarily block his attack. Aris explained, his tone still serious, but we can't hold out for long, we have to find a way to completely eliminate him as soon as possible. But, he is so powerful, how can we possibly be his opponent? Harry shook his head in despair, his voice trembling. Aris glanced at him and said calmly, "Don't be afraid, Harry, I have my own way to deal with him." Harry nodded blankly, but an unprecedented sense of trust and reliance rose in his heart. Yes, with Aris here, everything will be fine. Seeing that his attack was ineffective, Voldemort became furious and let out a deafening roar. "Shafik, do you think a little defensive magic can stop me?" His voice was full of arrogance and disdain. In fact, he did have that ability. It seems that Aris's previous guess was correct. Voldemort had been secretly accumulating strength, and it was only at this moment that it truly erupted. With such soul energy, it didn't look like he was about to die. No wonder Zhou Luo never dared to resist the dying soul of Voldemort. Who said this is just an ordinary defensive magic? However, the corners of Aris' lips slightly raised, and his tone was playful, "This is a magic circle that is specially designed to restrain you." Aris put a lot of thought into studying this formation. He had been thinking about how to completely get rid of Voldemort in his soul state. Now, the fun has just begun. What? Voldemort's voice suddenly tightened, revealing a hint of doubt. Aris did not explain, but raised his hand and quickly moved the magic wand on the defensive barrier, chanting a complex spell in a low voice. The golden barrier instantly became brighter and burst into dazzling light. Countless golden chains flew out from the barrier and coiled around Voldemort's soul like snakes. Voldemort roared and struggled desperately, but the chains held him tightly, preventing him from moving. What kind of magic is this? Harry's eyes widened in disbelief. A spell to imprison the soul. Aris said it lightly, as if it was just an ordinary magic. How is this possible? Voldemort's voice was trembling, full of fear and disbelief. This kind of magic, even elite aurors may not be able to do it. How could you? Are you still in the mood to think about this kind of thing now? Aris smiled coldly. Voldemort, you are not the only genius in this world. As he spoke, he raised his wand, pointed it at the chained Voldemort, and shouted, "Soul banishment." A blinding white light shot out from the tip of the wand, enveloping Voldemort's soul. Then, the golden formation seemed to undergo an unknown change, gradually forming a strange vortex of grey and white. The vortex instantly enveloped Voldemort's remaining soul, and then swallowed it up bit by bit. Voldemort let out a shrill scream, and his body began to twist and gradually became transparent. "This is impossible, I won't accept this." The Dark Lord's desperate and unwilling roar echoed in the cellar. After a moment, everything returned to silence. Voldemort's soul completely disappeared. Harry muttered to himself, feeling like everything was a dream. "How did you do that?" Aris put away his wand, a trace of fatigue rarely appeared on his face, and said in a calm voice, "He was not completely destroyed." He said in a deep voice, "I just exiled him to an unknown space. No one can predict whether he can find traces and come back. If it's just temporary, he probably won't have time to cause trouble." Harry looked at Aris with mixed feelings. Shock, admiration, gratitude, ecstasy, too many emotions intertwined at this moment. Deeply shocked by Aris's strength. "Thank you, Aris." In the end, he only uttered this sentence. If Aris wasn't here today, he would be in danger. If Voldemort was just in a weak state, it might not be a big deal, but Voldemort's previous condition was obviously different from what they expected, and it was very different. Aris looked at him with a faint smile on his face. "Can I still watch you die here?" He ruffled Harry's hair hard and said, "Let's go, Hermione and the others are waiting for us upstairs." Harry grinned, then nodded and followed Aris out. Along the way, he had only one thought in his mind. It's great to have Aris around. This is an unprecedented sense of security. For the first time, he felt that there was someone who could protect him. This feeling is like a father, no, like a brother. If he had a brother, it might be the same. Chapter 147. When they returned to the cellar entrance, Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape had been waiting there for a long time. "Mr. Potter! Mr. Shafik!" Professor McGonagall was relieved to see them return safely, but then she put on a stern expression, "Do you know how dangerous what you did was? What if something unexpected happened?" "I'm sorry, Professor, it's all my fault. Harry lowered his head and apologized guiltily. Aris did not speak. This was related to the safety of the Philosopher's Stone. McGonagall and the others would soon realize the seriousness of the matter and would not continue to pursue the matter. You guys! Professor McGonagall kept a straight face and took a deep breath after a long while. All right, Minerva, Professor Snape said suddenly. The most important thing now is to figure out what happened. His gloomy eyes swept over Harry and Aris, finally landing behind them. Where's Quirrell? The traitor, where is he? He was possessed by Voldemort, Aris said calmly. He's dead. What? Professor McGonagall gasped, his face pale. The mysterious man, how could he? It seems that Dumbledore's worries have come true. Professor Snape's face also looked a little ugly, and his expression was unpredictable. Where is the Philosopher's Stone? Did you get it? Harry quickly pulled the blood-red gem from his pocket. Well, why don't you let me keep it for now? I think I should go to see Professor Dumbledore later, and I will give it to him. As he said that, Aris reached out and took the magic mouth stone directly from Harry's hand. What do you want to do with this? Snape's eyes were shocked, and even Professor McGonagall showed a surprised look. I told you, I'll give this little gadget to Professor Dumbledore later. Aris looked at Snape seriously. Although he knew that everyone present had no problem, the Philosopher's Stone was a serious matter after all, so Aris was not ready to hand it over to anyone. Moreover, he wanted to study it. How could he hand it over so easily? I will report this matter to Dumbledore. You two, follow me. Snape looked at Aris coldly, then looked at Professor McGonagall and turned around and said. Harry glanced at Aris, then followed Snape cautiously, feeling uneasy. Aris, however, had a nonchalant expression on his face, as if he didn't care about what he was about to face. They came to the principal's office. Dumbledore had been waiting there for a long time. Harry, Aris. The old headmaster looked at them kindly, but his eyes were shining with a sharp light. I have heard Severus's general account. Now, please tell me exactly what happened. Harry stammered and told Aris what had happened, looking at him from time to time, as if he was in doubt. Aris calmly added some details, telling the story of how he saw through Quirrell's disguise and how he defeated the remaining spirit of Voldemort. Dumbledore and Snape were stunned and speechless for a long time. Merlin! Professor McGonagall muttered to himself, his hands shaking with shock. Mr. Shafik, you actually, how did you do it? That is truly Voldemort's soul. Really? Dumbledore looked at Aris for a long time, then nodded slowly. I see, Mr. Shafik, you have done a great job today. Hogwarts, and the entire wizarding world, should thank you. We can't let him destroy Hogwarts, right? Aris smiled, and then reminded Dumbledore, what's the matter with the Ministry of Magic today that suddenly called you over? Because. Dumbledore was about to answer, but he frowned. Because, he just thought that what Aris said, seemed to have a deeper meaning. Thinking about it carefully, there is indeed something fishy here. It is obviously not a matter of urgency, but the Ministry of Magic suddenly urgently recruited him, as if deliberately covering up something. Could it be that something went wrong at the Ministry of Magic? Otherwise, why would the conditions be created for Quirrell and Voldemort? Dumbledore's expression became more and more serious, and he fell silent for a long time. Professor, you should know that Voldemort is not so easy to be eliminated. Aris' voice sounded again, and his tone became slightly serious. Given his methods, he must have other tricks up his sleeve. I'm afraid this battle is just the beginning. We must always remain vigilant. You're right. Dumbledore nodded in agreement, temporarily putting the Ministry of Magic's affairs aside, and then said seriously, although the dark forces have been temporarily repelled, the wizarding world is still not at peace. Perhaps Hogwarts should also strengthen its defenses, and other places, should also make some arrangements. As for you, Mr. Shafik. The old principal looked at Aris meaningfully. I think, after this, we need to have a good talk about it. About those magical powers you use that are specifically for the soul. Aris looked calm and composed, of course, as long as you want to hear it, but everyone has secrets, don't they? You are no exception, Principal. If you want to share with me some rare spells, can you also show me some of your secret techniques, such as the ancient fairy fire? I'm quite interested in that. He smiled and turned around. You are such a stubborn person, you are not willing to suffer any loss at all. Dumbledore smiled and waved his hand. But I think the most important thing now is to appease the students and stabilize the situation. Your friends are still waiting for news. They must be very anxious. Professor. At this time, Snape suddenly spoke, looking at Aris and said, "The magician is with him. I think you should know about this. As for how to deal with the stone in the end, you may need to think about it carefully." "Oh? I thought the thing was in Harry's pocket." Dumbledore lowered his head and looked at Aris through the gap in his glasses, with an inexplicable flash in his eyes. "So, what are you going to do with it?" "Of course I'm going to return it to its original owner," Aris said without any hesitation. "I'm just about to go to Senior Nick Flamel's place. This thing originally belonged to him, didn't it?" "That won't do." Dumbledore shook his head. Then, he waved his hand gently, and the magic stone that Aris had placed on his body suddenly floated up gently as if it had sensed something. "Professor." Aris was anxious, because those were his experimental equipment. "Don't worry, I know what you want to do, but before that, I have to think about it carefully. This little thing is too precious and too important. In order to prevent it from being used by someone with ulterior motives. If you need it, ask me for it again." As he spoke, Dumbledore waved his hand lightly, and the Philosopher's Stone disappeared into his sleeve. That understated spellcasting ability has a kind of elegant and graceful temperament. Okay, Zhao. After hearing this, Aris understood what Dumbledore meant. He knew that the Philosopher's Stone could not be given to him in front of everyone. He would talk about it later. Aris understood it instantly. "I think this is a good idea." Professor McGonagall smiled, then got up and left in a hurry. There were still a lot of things in the castle that needed her to deal with. Now that she saw that the problem with the Philosopher's Stone had been solved, she was too lazy to stay here any longer. Snape glanced at Aris, snorted coldly, and turned to leave the principal's office. He needed to go back to the corridor on the 4th floor and take a look, especially at the three-headed hellhound. That big guy is still in the form of a small toy now, and he needs to deal with it quickly. As for Harry, Dumbledore looked lovingly at the savior who had remained silent the whole time. "You'd better go to the school infirmary now. Madame Pomfrey should make you feel better." Harry Potter had gone through a series of battles before, and was in a very bad condition, especially the scar on his forehead, which felt like it was burning, and it hurt terribly, and his head was a little dizzy. "And you, Aris, you'd better go to the school infirmary too." Chapter 148. Late at night, in the school clinic. Harry, Ronald, and Aris were all lying in hospital beds. In fact, Aris was not injured, just a little tired. But after hearing that he had fought a battle with the soul of an evil wizard, Madame Pomfrey was terrified, so she arranged a bed for Aris without any doubt and insisted that he rest here for a night. It was so thrilling. Harry muttered to himself, and he collapsed on the bed, staring at the ceiling with lifeless eyes, as if he was in a trance. "I thought I'm really going to die there. It's really scary to think about it." Ronald, who was lying on the bed next to him, suddenly turned around. "So, you really met the mysterious man, what does he look like?" "It's scary, it's evil." Harry frowned, as if he was thinking of some scenes again, and said with lingering fear, "I have never seen anything so scary. I was totally confused at that time." Luckily Aris was there. You have no idea how calm and cool he was at that time. Harry suddenly turned his gaze to Aris on the other side with admiration and respect in his eyes. "Of course, I think so." Ronald nodded in agreement, like a little fanboy, mindlessly flattering. "That's Aris, the strongest freshman in Hogwarts, Aris. Is this the title you 790 came up with?" Harry became interested. "No, now the whole school is talking about what happened in the basement. The title of the strongest freshman was given to Aris by everyone. I think it is very appropriate," Ronald explained. "Indeed, very apt." Harry nodded in agreement. On the other side, Aris shook his head speechlessly after hearing this title, the strongest freshman? "This is the only title I deserve. It's a bit disrespectful, isn't it? Are you kidding me? Are there any strong people among the freshmen? Except for Hermione, everyone else is a weakling. Even Harry and Ronald are only slightly stronger. The title of the strongest freshman is not as good as that of an ordinary adult wizard, right?" It sounded good at first, but when I think about it carefully, there are indeed some problems. Harry murmured belatedly, "I think Aris's power has definitely reached the professor level." "That's right, if we let Aris teach us, it will definitely be more than enough. Ronald still agreed without thinking. Speaking of which, I have a question, Aris. At this time, Harry suddenly seemed to have thought of something, looked at Aris, and then his expression gradually became serious. Well, you say. Li Yi responded casually. Why can my blood cause such great harm to Voldemort? Harry was somewhat puzzled and bewildered. I don't understand, what exactly is that power? Aris was silent for a moment before explaining, that is an ancient and powerful magic. Legend has it that it can protect the caster's loved ones and resist any dark magic. Casting it requires tremendous magic power and determination, and at the cost of one's life. Few wizards can succeed, but... Aris gave Harry a long look. Your mother successfully performed this magic. She protected you at the cost of her life that night. Haven't you always wanted to know why Voldemort's killing curse rebounded on you? That's why. Harry was stunned, his eyes turned red little by little, and then he slowly lowered his head. SSS, TTT. She is a great witch. Aris said sincerely. Her love for you triumphed over Voldemort's evil, and this love will always protect you. So, you have to be strong, Harry, and don't let them down. Yet. Harry nodded vigorously, tears flashing in his eyes, but he was very determined. I will definitely work hard to become an excellent wizard, defeat Voldemort, and avenge them. At this moment, fire flashed in Harry's eyes. There has never been a moment when he knew so clearly what he wanted to do. Very good. Aris smiled with relief. The savior training thing seems to be a game for kids? Okay, it's getting late. Aris said softly, then turned around and left Harry and the other man with a side-lying back view, kindly reminding them, go to bed early, Dade, there are still many things to do tomorrow, and the final exam is coming soon. Harry looked at Aris's back, and was suddenly pulled back to reality from his previous immersed in the story. Oh, the final exam is coming soon. It's over, we are definitely going to fail the exam. Ronald also let out a wail. But how could the two of them sleep now? Soon, they started talking about what happened in the basement again. What happened yesterday was unbelievable. How on earth could you? Ronald looked very interested and started chatting with Harry at night. It's such a pity that I got knocked out in the wizard chess game and missed all the excitement afterwards. After I woke up, I found out that you and Aris had fought Voldemort. Merlin, I didn't even see such an exciting scene. I'm so unlucky. He scratched his red hair in annoyance. Next time something like this happens, you must call me. DB. Harry opened his mouth, not knowing what to say. I hope this won't happen again next time. It sounds scary. Seeing that he didn't respond, Ronald became even more frustrated. Especially Aris, his fight with Voldemort will be really exciting. The next day, when Harry woke up, he felt refreshed. Madame Pomfrey's medical skills were simply miraculous. Yesterday's thrilling experience seemed like just a dream. If it weren't for the dull pain from the lightning scar on his forehead, he would have doubted whether it had really happened. Aris, he's gone already. He glanced at the bed next to him. Harry, Madame Pomfrey said we can leave too. At this time, Ronald just walked in from outside. After confirming that they could be discharged from the hospital, the two rushed to the common room. I heard that Hufflepuff's Seeker is injured. Gryffindor will have no opponent in next week's Quidditch match. On the way, Anne said excitedly. Really? Harry perked up. Of course, he was Gryffindor's new Seeker. Especially before the final exams, the last Quidditch match was what he was most concerned about. In that case, the championship is ours. Ronald nodded. Don't be too optimistic. Maybe they will find a substitute. Harry couldn't help but say. It can be seen that he actually wanted to beat the Hufflepuff team fairly on the court. Even if there is a substitute, he is definitely not as good as you. Your flying skills are now better than most of the Seekers in the academy, right? It's simply amazing. As they were talking, the two had already reached the door of the Gryffindor common room. At this moment, Hermione suddenly came out in a hurry. Chapter 149. She looked breathless, but her eyes were bright. Have you seen Aris? I'm looking for him. Harry and Ronald looked at each other and looked at Hermione in confusion. No. What's the hurry? Hermione waved a roll of parchment in her hand excitedly. Guess what this is? Headmaster Dumbledore's approval. Approval. Harry became even more curious. The Defense Against Magic Club has been approved. Hermione beamed. What happened last night made Professor Dumbledore realize that we must strengthen the study and training of defensive magic. Of course, it's mainly because I think it's necessary, and Aris also thought it was feasible before. So the professor agreed to let me take the lead and set up a club for the whole school, specializing in studying various defensive spells and fighting against dark magic. Of course, if Reese wasn't the leader, I wouldn't be that strong enough to handle the senior students. It's almost time for the holiday and the approval has just come down. Harry was a little confused. It's mainly for preparations for the next school year. Hermione explained, however, there should be an event in the next 2 days, and you all need to come then. Having said that, she hurried to leave again. Wait, let's go too. Harry and Ronald looked at each other and quickly followed. They originally wanted to talk to Hermione about what happened yesterday, and then go find Aris together. In the auditorium, it was breakfast time. Where is that? I knew he wouldn't miss breakfast. Hermione spotted Aris at the Ravenclaw table at a glance, and a look of joy appeared on her face. Come to think of it, I'm a little hungry too. Harry also touched his stomach. Aris didn't even invite us to dinner. Ronald muttered indignantly, after all, we are friends who have fought side by side and have known each other for life and death. Okay, stop mumbling. Harry rolled his eyes. Over there, Hermione had come to Aris' side. Aris, what are you looking at? Hermione placed the parchment in front of the boy. What? Aris didn't even raise his head, nor did he look at the parchment. He was still enjoying the delicious toast comfortably. The interlayer on top was spread with a layer of honey, and it was not greasy at all. It was very delicious. The Defense Magic Club's approval. Hermione pushed the parchment toward Aris again. Professor Dumbledore has approved it, and it can be established. Oh. Aris responded. Aren't you excited at all? Hermione's face fell a little. Of course, this is a good thing. It can encourage schools to pay more attention to the defense against the dark arts education, which can be considered a blessing in disguise. So, when are you going to start the first event? Hermione smiled again. By the way, we are going to recruit club members from now on. Me? Aris was stunned for a moment. Why would you ask me this kind of thing when you run a club? Come on, you are the person in charge of the club. Happy raised his nose. Me? Why? Aris suddenly had a bad feeling. Except for you, no one else is qualified. Harry and Ronald sat down next to him and said. Yes, that's why I came to you. You are the only one who can be the president of this club. Of course, I will plan and direct the activities with you, but you must be the president. Hermione emphasized. Given your ability, it's absolutely perfect. Aris shook his head helplessly and said seriously, I'm afraid I'm not suitable. Why don't you let Harry come? He also participated in the battle with Voldemort, didn't he? No, I can't. Harry shook his head quickly. Don't refuse, you are much better than them. Hermione stuffed a badge into Aris's hand without hesitation. Just go like that. See you in the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom after school tomorrow. Don't break your promise. After saying that, she left in a hurry, leaving Aris with a confused look on his face. He still doesn't know what the girl wants to do. That's really neat. Ronald exclaimed sincerely. Don't be fooled by Hermione's usual gentle appearance. She is more capable than anyone else when it comes to getting things done. Harry also nodded. Aris smiled bitterly and looked at the president badge in his hand. I really didn't think of becoming the president of such a thing. It's really too troublesome. Ding. Triggering social mission, President of the Magic Defense Club. Task requirements, assist Hermione in organizing the Defense Club, guide members to practice defense spells, and hold a demonstration against dark magic at the end of the semester. Completion rewards, points plus 1000, personal reputation plus 50, number of draws plus 3. Tip, a good student should be a teacher. Don't let your skills go to waste. Seeing the task prompt, Aris was stunned for a moment, and then a little surprised. Being a teacher? Professor Aris? The most important thing is, a new task appeared in the system? This is not common. It seems that this president is set to take office. But for those rewards, it seems that the problem is not that big. That's 1000 points and 3 lucky draw rewards. As for personal reputation, Aris has not yet figured out what it is used for. The next day, Aris arrived at the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom at the agreed time. Surprisingly, Hermione arrived earlier than him. The girl was busy setting up the venue. When she saw him coming, she went to greet him with surprise. "The great, Aris. I was worried you might stand me up." Aris chuckles. "If I stand you up, will you bite me?" "What are you talking about?" Hermione blushed. "I'm not a puppy." Having said that, he turned around and continued to work. Seeing this, Aris was not idle either, waving his magic wand to help. The two worked for a few minutes and soon the classroom was brand new. A banner with the words Hogwarts Defense of Magic Club was hung on the podium, the walls were covered with introductions and diagrams of various defensive spells, and there were several dummies on the ground for practice. "It's great," Aris praised sincerely. "With these facilities, learning will be much easier." "Of course." Hermione raised her head proudly. "I put a lot of effort into it." "By the way, have you thought about what to talk about in the first lesson?" "It's a secret. You'll know when the time comes." Aris blinked and kept it a secret. In fact, he himself hadn't thought about what he was going to say. The key point was, he had no experience. If it weren't for the system reward, he really didn't want to come. Hermione pouted in dissatisfaction and was about to say something when the classroom door opened. Students came in groups of 3 or 4, all with a hint of curiosity and inquiry on their faces, and many of them had excitement on their faces, as if they were here to see something exciting. After these people entered the classroom, they immediately looked at Aris. Then, a small number of first and second year students shouted, "Good job, Professor Shafik." Chapter 150. As the voice of Professor Shafik rang out, there was also laughter and discussion among the crowd. "Look, it's him in the basement who is said to have had a big fight with Professor Quirrell. Merlin, I heard that Professor Quirrell was possessed by the spirit of a mysterious man, and he defeated the spirit of a mysterious man. I really want to know what kind of magic he used and how he did it. It must be a rumor. Isn't the you-know-who dead? And Potter is still alive and well in school." "I think so. Professor Quirrell doesn't seem to be very smart, so it shouldn't be difficult to defeat him. What I want to know more is why Professor Dumbledore agreed to let them set up this club. This has never happened before." Amid the discussion, everyone looked at the two people on the podium. The gazes may be admiration, jealousy, or suspicion. Aris looked normal, while Hermione coughed lightly, then blushed slightly and spoke with gritted teeth, "Welcome everyone to the Magic Defense Club. I'm the Vice President Hermione Granger. I'm sure everyone has heard about what happened in the school basement yesterday. So, Dumbledore made an exception and allowed us to form this club. Aris was a participant in the basement battle, and it was he who successfully defeated Professor Quirrell and the mysterious man's soul and saved the entire school. So, we should all be happy and honored that he can come and teach us how to use defense." When they heard the name, many people present gasped and the discussion became louder. "What a joke, is it really the soul of a mysterious person? I didn't think it was just a rumor. The professors didn't even come out to explain or refute this rumor. I guess it's true. How is this possible? Isn't the mysterious man dead? And what about Quirrell? How did the two of them get together? This is too unbelievable. I want to know now how Shafik defeated Quirrell and the mysterious man. It sounds incredible." As the discussion began, some panic inevitably appeared in the crowd. This was obviously what Hermione had expected. She did not panic, but raised her voice and continued, "But don't panic. We hold this club in the hope of helping everyone learn how to better protect themselves. Next, let Aris show you how to do it." With that, Hermione took a step back and gave the stage to Aris. Aris glanced at the little wizard below, sighed softly, and then walked to the front. Then, he waved his hand and golden light shone instantly. An armor-like shield formed around him, wrapping him tightly. "See it? This is iron armor, the simplest and most effective protective spell." Aris knocked on the golden shield that was almost out of service. The faint voice seemed to have magic, making the room quiet. "Next, please 2 students come forward and attack me with spells. Any spell will do. This way, everyone can see the power of the protective spell more directly." The students looked at each other in surprise. Some senior students looked even more confused. The ordinary armor spell seems to be just a layer of faint white light. Why does Shafik's armor spell seem a little different? The golden light looks so cool. I have to say, this spell is really great for showing off. Even Hermione's eyes lit up, but this was obviously within her expectations. No one knows Aris's strength better than her. On the other side, Harry and Ronald had just walked into the classroom. Looking at Aris on the stage, they found a seat and sat down excitedly, then looked around. After a commotion in the audience, 2 brave boys finally stood up and attacked Aris. Fainted. Everyone is petrified. A beam of red and white light suddenly shot towards Aris, very powerful. It can be seen that the 2 senior members have learned the spells well. However, as soon as the 2 spells touched the shield, an incredible scene happened. Ding ding! 2 muffled sounds spread as if they were real. The stunning spell and the petrifying spell were actually bounced off by the golden barrier and reflected onto the ceiling. Oh my god, he's fine. This golden armor is so powerful. Why do I feel it's a bit weird? Is this the armor spell in the textbook? This Shafik is really capable. No wonder even gods dare to provoke him. Is there anyone else? Come on. I just can't do it. I can't break that shield. After hearing this, Aris said calmly, if anyone still refuses to accept it, you can continue to attack me. Anyone can do it. Don't worry that I won't be able to handle it. As he spoke, his eyes swept across the audience. At this time, more people could no longer sit still. Even Harry and Ronald stood up eagerly, holding their wands as if they wanted to cast a spell. Soon, more magical lights shot towards Aris from below. Perhaps it was because the young wizards had never had such an experience before. They could cast spells superior to others without any worries and without worrying about anything going wrong. There was simply nothing more enjoyable than this. More and more spells were fired at Aris. The golden armor spell was like a barrier, firmly protecting Aris from behind. All the spells were bounced back to the ceiling. Aris seemed to do it on purpose. When some harmless little spells were fired at him, he bounced them back the same way he had cast them. Suddenly, exclamations rang out in the classroom. There was a little wizard whose hair stood up after being blown up by a firework. Well, that person was Seamus Finnegan from Gryffindor. There was also a little wizard who was hit by his own levitation spell, floated up from the ground, and then fell down again. More flames continued to bounce around in the classroom. Although they were not very powerful, they caused a burst of exclamations. Okay, it's time to end it. Suddenly, Aris' voice suddenly rang out at 1.4, a sound amplified by a sound amplification spell, instantly stunning all the little wizards. A pair of eyes sparkled, looking up at the stage with excitement. At this time, the little wizards were all shocked. Aris cleared his throat and pretended to be serious. You should have seen the power of the armor spell. Of course, it's not easy to cast an iron armor spell like mine. Not only do you need to understand the knowledge in the textbooks, but more importantly, the elemental energy. The reason why my iron armor spell is golden light is because it is blessed with the energy of the gold element. Iron armor is not infallible. It also has flaws and limitations. For example, if the caster's own magic power is insufficient, or if they are attacked by a powerful spell, the shield may be broken and the protection may fail. Besides, this is a very common thing. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.